Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 597 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again in one piece. We survived the Day of Rage, or whatever the hell the people in the Middle East were calling it. We lived.
And we did survive the Day of Chaos that the Hamas terrorist group declared that they were going to be conducting all around the world. And I actually have a theory as to why everything went so well today. Matthew, you know what day it is?
It's Mike Myers. He came out and he saved the day.
It's Friday the 13th. Jason Voorhees got to him before they could get to us. We're saved. But moving on from the joke, of course, luckily nothing happened today. That hopefully means that nothing will happen tomorrow and everything will just continue on normally. But still, I hope that everyone was able to get through today safely. Of course, everyone was kind of scared that the jihad was going to start circling around the world. It appears that it didn't, so we were very lucky. And it looks like all of our preparations and everyone's vigilance paid off in the end because nothing happened, which is a great thing to know. And so, with that in mind, we are going to be moving on into tonight's news, and starting off inside of Ukraine first, and we'll be covering the small amount of news that we got out of Israel today at the very end of the stream. So if you're looking for the Israel news that is in the title, make sure to stick around till the entire Ukraine war news segment is over with, because then we'll be getting on down there and giving a quick little recap of the events that have happened in that area. Before we even move into the news, make sure to hit the like button. It helps us out greatly. We've already gotten up to 540 likes, and it'd be great if we were able to get up to 1,000 likes here really quickly. It, of course, helps out our channel and being able to reach more people, and it also makes us very happy to see that folks enjoy what we do here covering the news, and hitting the like button is the best way to show that. And so with that, we are now going to be moving on into the Russian casualty report for the day. We're actually going to be doing this as long as the Avdiivka offensive is going on first in the news for Ukraine, because it's very important to lay out how badly the Russian army has already done today before I start getting into frontline analysis and frontline clips. So moving on into our Russian casualty report for the day, it is juicy.
Oh, it's so juicy, except for the Bobcats, but I can live with that.
Except for the Bobcats. Only one was lost, but they sacrificed the Bobcat losses for these losses up here. 1,030 Russian soldiers gone in 24 hours. That's not killed and wounded, that's just killed. In 24 hours, 1,030 of them. Numbers like these haven't been seen since the beginning of this year of 2023. That was nearly 10 months ago. And now we're seeing these numbers again in this counteroffensive, which is a massive ordeal. Not only that, we saw that almost another 50 armored personnel carriers have been lost, along with 33 supply trucks, also a very large number. 26 tanks were also destroyed over the past 24 hours, along with 44 artillery pieces and 17 drones and one anti-aircraft warfare system. The Russians have lost more equipment today, especially personnel, in the past day than even the past 2 days of the offensive operation. Now they're losing even more, and it looks like as this offensive keeps on going, they're not really finding their footing. They're in fact getting even worse off, especially in the infantry losses. It is becoming an absolute slaughter. And going off of this, once again, I can't reiterate this enough. This is putting so much pressure on the Russian army. This offensive can't last that long. But going over these casualties here real quick, make sure to burn these into your heads for the rest of the night's news. 1,030 troops lost, nearly 50 armored vehicles lost, 33 supply trucks, 26 tanks, and 44 artillery pieces. Those are the most important numbers of the day, and those are the ones that we'd be moving into Avdiivka with those losses in mind. So moving on from the Russian casualty report and straight into the city of Avdiivka, the counteroffensive has continued as large today as it has been over the past few days. In fact, to try and make sure that we could cover news in other areas of the front, because there's actually a decent amount of activity spread along the entirety of the front line in southeastern Ukraine today, we had to actually cut away a decent amount of clips that were coming from this area. I can assure y'all, however, that all the clips that y'all saw yesterday, the massive amount of them that we had to show in this area, they do exist today, but we're only going to be showing about 4 to 5 of them, just so that we can make sure to get to other parts of the news in the rest of Ukraine, because there's a lot going on near Robotny as well, around Bakhmut, and also in the area of the Kremena Forest, and we want to make sure to cover all of that. But moving on down to Avdiivka, the frontline advances that we've seen for today, for 1,030 soldiers lost, 50 armored personnel carriers, 26 tanks, and 44 artillery pieces, it was able to culminate in these gains right here. So what we can see is that the Russians were able to take a tree line. You can see that they moved about 20 feet forward and took some trees. Big news. And also we saw that down here in the area of Vodiane or Opitne, we'll just call this Opitne, we saw that they moved forward and they took a whopping 1/4 of one field. Now, these kinds of advances are big news, especially considering that they've lost about the equivalent of a small part of a Russian regiment today. To be able to take one tree line in the quarter of one field, this is big news. And I'm sure the Russians will be winning this thing by Christmas. Or they won't be around by Christmas to know whether they're winning or not. But regardless, this is going incredibly poorly for the 3rd day in a row for the Russian army. They are not improving their strategies, their doctrines, and in fact, they're actually getting worse. The losses are increasing as time keeps going by. So going off of all this, having a pretty good idea, this counteroffensive, like I've been saying for the past few days, is probably going to peter out before it even makes any massive amounts of gains or puts the Ukrainians in a very vulnerable position. And once again, I cannot state this enough, and I think I've said this about 4 times. The losses are so high, there's no way they can keep the losses up. They can try and bring in new battalion tactical groups that have full combat strength if they even exist inside of Ukraine. That can't help at this point. There's nothing that can help this situation. It is a ruined situation from the start as far as the Russians are concerned with the offensive. But moving on into our clips from today, we did see a couple of interesting ones, once again showing the massive amount of losses that the Russians have been taking in this area. Starting off with our first clip, we got to see that more Russian forces had been destroyed.
Oh, the electric guitar.
But anyways, we can see a little BMP on the move down there, and we can see that this is the Avdiivka unit that's going to be hitting this little BMP. We can see it moving around. Ooh, I don't know what that was.
Oh, dear, man. Little fireworks came off of it, too. Oh,
dude,
miss.
They're shooting Roman candles at this thing. Oh, man. And we can see that. Oh.
They didn't miss that time.
They didn't miss. 3rd time is the charm. Oh.
3 strikes, you're out.
Oh, great heavens. It looks like they got that one pretty effectively.
Look at little crispy little bits in the air and everything. That thing went up bad.
Man, if there was a Russian colonel inside of that thing, call him the crispy colonel, because it's looking like a bowl of KFC. But we can see it now getting hit in normal footage. Well, actually, we see a second BMP moving up, getting hit in a normal camera. And we see it's now rolling a little bit slower. We can't tell if there was any engine bay damage. A second hit has just occurred, setting the fuel tank on fire in the infantry compartment. And now we can see this BMP is burning out next to the other one and has actually burned a hole in the tree line.
I think really like disassembled it. Oh,
he-
what I see. Get off of
I
it.
see combat gear, but we can see more Russians moving around out there in the fields. We see them doing their thing, just kind of lackadaisically walking around, and now we can see the Ukrainian artillery coming down on top of them.
Well, they finally built their trenches a little bit, not straight.
Man, they are booking it. We can now see them trying to hide into one of the outposts, and we all see them funneling in. Of course, that's not smart. Here comes the egg, and we all know that eggs are very expensive at this time in history, so we know the Ukrainians are living on the Ritz with these kinds of bomblets, and we can see that they hit right outside the outpost. We can now see another clip showing more bomblets landing inside of a tree line. We can see a Russian starting to conduct exercises down there as well. We can see more bomblets being dropped onto the area, and even more of them. The Ukrainians love the bomblets. The bomblet is life. We can see them continuing to drop them onto Russian forces, the Russians scurrying around. We can see this guy actually hitting the deck. That was a little bit of a smart move. We can see them now going for a smaller outpost, and it appears that they turned it into a non-existent outpost. We can now see them going for a trench and giving it a little bit of a smoke show. They love smoke shows. We can now see them dropping another bomblet in the tree line and a Russian having a little bit of a reflex about it. We can see them dropping even more bomblets into the tree line. And we can see the Russians just aren't having a good day today. We can see them continuing to drop even more bomblets. Y'all love to hear me say that over and over, don't you? We're going to have to come up with something more creative. We can see an Uber Eats delivery. We can see the drone coming on down to the recipients of the order. Oh, heavens. It looks like they brought in the deluxe delivery. And we see some Russians moving around. It looks like they're trying to catch another delivery. And I'm sure that they're going to be giving out that Uber Eats delivery very soon. Keep an eye out for it. It's coming. We can see the Russians moving through a wheat field. Kind of ironic. Because, once again, we're talking about Uber Eats here, y'all. And they're about to be getting an Uber Eated hot, nice shell from the Ukrainian army. We see them moving around.
A hot, nice shell.
Yeah. And we see one guy here. It appears that he's having a time of it. Oh, that's because that's a Russian prisoner and the Ukrainians have moved into the area. Now they're clearing out the trench. And we can see them doing their best to move through the trench and clear out the area. We see them crawling into a dugout and taking care of things. And then we can see the Ukrainian trident popping up right at the end. A very nice video.
Ukraine.
A very nice video to watch. It's Slava Ukraine. And great to see that they were able to, of course, clear out this little area and make sure that the Russians learned what hubris is. Moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see the view from a Russian tank, which is very rare. This is actually from the 114th Brigade in the area of Avdiivka. We rarely ever get to see a Russian perspective of fighting and combat in the field, but this is a clip that actually came from today, sourced from Russia Today, showing a Russian tank in action in the area around Avdiivka, and showing us what it looks like from the Russian perspective to be on this end of the slaughter. Now, really quickly, I don't know who owns the music right there. Considering it's Russia Today, I have a feeling it's some kind of a Russian composer that may own the music, and just in case y'all don't know, YouTube isn't enforcing Russian copyrights. At the same time, however, we don't want to play it dangerously, so we're going to be muting the audio and just playing the clip. We can see the Russian T-72B rolling up behind its lead tank. We can see a large cloud of smoke billowing in the distance as the tanks fire and just allow their gun barrel to drag through the bushes. Not really that great, but nevertheless, they are still firing. We can see them, they actually split a tree right there. And they're still advancing and firing at what we would assume are Ukrainian positions, but we don't really know for certain. We can see the tanks continuing to roll forward. And we can see them not really stopping for anything and just blasting around like this is a Call of Duty mission or you're trying to get to the super secret base and destroy everything that the enemy forces have. So I'm not really sure if they're even firing at real Ukrainian positions, or if they're just firing at pre-planned stuff as they move along. Because they're moving way too quickly to be clearing out these positions, and there's also no infantry around to support these tanks from what we can see. But they are covering ground.
Man, I'll be so happy when this war is over and Russia today turns into a Russia yesterday, and they can report on the losses.
Man, Russia...
the RT really doesn't put out much war footage from what I've seen. This is kind of unique.
Yeah, it is quite rare, actually. We don't really get to see this much or often from them, and this is a very rare look at what it looks like from the Russian end of the war.
Which is obviously very favorable to themselves, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, they're not going to be showing the massive columns of tanks getting wiped out. We're probably seeing the only 2 tanks that survived the first day of fighting here in this clip. And we can see more Russian tanks on the road in a column, just advancing and firing. Now, you see, these kinds of tactics, I can't stress enough, are just absolutely archaic. Just to have 3 tanks sitting in a line on a road, no spacing, no formations, and just have them move on along. And now we can see these tanks passing what appears to be an entire battalion tactical group behind those tanks on the road, and then the video ends. So right there at the end, you really got to see what the Russian army is looking like. Once again, massive disorganization, and to try and keep things somewhat in a semblance of normal frontline activity, they just group all the BTGs up into one giant column down a road and just send them on their way. But moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also got to see a couple of Russian BMPs destroyed. And really quickly. Actually, this is a duplicate. Sorry about that, everyone. I don't know how in the world I got a duplicate mixed into that, but moving on from that into our next one, we did get to see a fairly rare TOS thermobaric missile launcher getting blown up today, which is pretty nice. Kind of like Russia today, the Russians are more so getting blown up today. I like blown up today more than Russia today, but here's the clip. We can see the TOS down there in the field. It's already being targeted, the shell's coming in, and in a second, it'll go nuclear. Right there.
Oh. Ooh. I'm sure it was loaded with thermobarics, wasn't it?
Of course it was.
Man, it sucked the air out of the room, and also the Russians' pride and soul with it.
Man, this sucked all their hopes out of the air. They sat there with, this will help us to push forward. And then when they saw it blow up, even the guys who were 5 miles away just seeing the fireball went, I can't breathe. I'm totally speechless, Blair. I don't know what to say. But moving on from that, wonderful to see the TOS being destroyed by the Ukrainians. And well behind the lines, we also got to see, in the middle of all this, a Ukrainian soldier be cooking. And he be cooking good. Check it out. Okay, we're going to be muting that. But we can see him cooking it up with good food.
Man, what's he cooking on, though?
Rocks? I mean, it looks like
no, man,
meat.
Those are rockets.
Oh, yeah.
Man,
I mean,
those are rockets.
That's no big deal, but he's cooking up, like, I don't know, meat of some kind. I can't really tell, but, you know.
Man, the seasoning on this is insane, man. He's put explosive style seasoning on this. He's cooking it on top of like rocket launchers. Like, this food's gonna be bussin'.
Man, this food is going to be fire. Absolute fire. I would say, man, that you better watch out eating it though, because it's probably gonna be explosive coming out the other end. Oh man, the pun's intended. But anyways, still wonderful to see the Ukrainian soldiers cooking up some good food. And as they say, wait, let him cook. Moving on from that, we can see that the Russian offensive in Avdiivka is once again a complete disaster today, and is showing no room of improvement, no benefit coming around the corner for the Russians. Things are very poor. Going off of what we've seen today, it does appear that the Russians are trying to sweep forward through the fields around Krasnoarivka and also in this direction as well towards Stepove. It looks like they're actually trying to create a pincer maneuver, considering the amount of movements that we've seen over the past 48 hours. We saw an advance down here south of Krasnoarivka. Then we saw one north. So it looks like they actually had a two-pronged offensive heading out from behind Krasnoarivka, one going north and then swooping back down towards Berdichi, and then another one that punched straight through, going straight towards Stepove, trying to create a pincer maneuver onto Stepove. That's obviously not happening at this point, but that looks like what this is supposed to be in its infancy, but it's going very slowly and taking heavy losses. Meanwhile, down here, it looks like they're once again going for the old just drive straight down the highway trick towards your target, and those targets would be the villages of Tenenke and Sieverne. It appears that they're once again making no progress towards those goals. The Ukrainians, in fact, have even closed the distance in between them and the Russian forces today, and the Russians have taken very little, if not any, ground in this area as well. Going off of this, we're seeing that the Ukrainian defensive is holding incredibly strong, and Ukrainian defenders must have focused most of their efforts, instead of being inside of the city of Avdiivka, into its peripheries on the flanks near Krasnoarivka and Tenenke. Based off of this, we can assume that with the heavy Russian losses we're seeing, the Russians will probably not make any gains, and if we had to try and compare this to a battle that's occurred so far in the war, I would say it's very similar to the Battle of Volodar, right up here. As many of y'all may remember, last year in the winter of 2022 and the early spring of 2023, the Russians fought the Battle of Volodar with a large amount of armor, hoping to break through and take the small fortress for a large part in the plains, and by taking this fortress they would have a dominating position over Vodine and all of the surrounding villages as well, considering that this was the only town in the area that had multi-story Khrushchevka blocks, which could give you a commanding view of the surrounding regions. That never happened, and the Ukrainians inflicted massive amounts of infantry losses and armored losses on the Russians in this area, and their offensive would culminate in an absolute failure. That appears to be what we're seeing in Avdiivka, but on a far larger scale this time, as the Russian army has apparently dedicated entire brigades into this offensive, and we're seeing that those brigades are being chewed up and spat out incredibly quickly. Moving on behind the lines, we've also seen that the logistical issues of the Russian army will certainly be exacerbated due to the destruction of the Yasnovata bridge over a small creek in the area. We can actually see a picture of a destroyed MTLB somewhere in the area. We don't know when that was destroyed, but it is near the Yasnovata bridge, according to geolocation. We can also see an MT-12 Rapira was also lost in the area, and then looking at the bridge, we can see once again, the bridge is certainly down and destroyed at this point, and the Ukrainians were really exercising a lot of forethought when they destroyed this bridge. If I go into this area here on Google Maps, you will see that this area is largely flat, and the few areas that aren't flat have a few bridges. For example, there is the E50 bridge that passes over the railroad in the area, but from what I understand, that isn't really the bridge of major importance. It's more so this one right here, or these two in particular. These are the ones that we've kind of seen that have been made a big deal of, and also the ones that we saw destroyed on picture just a minute ago. This is one of the only bridges that crosses one of the only water features in the area, the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Channel, which is kind of like a canal and ferry boat kind of passageway. And destroying this crossing means that the Russians are going to have to find a bridge laying team to lay down an improvised bridge, or they're going to have to take a detour all the way around and over a massive area, which will be spreading their supply lines a little bit more thin and requiring more time to be taken for the supplies to reach the lines, decreasing the overall efficiency of Russian logisticians and also decreasing the efficiency of their frontline fighting units inside of Avdiivka. This means that the Ukrainians have already probably gotten some information before this offensive even began that the Russians were going to be starting it here. And based off of that, they've already started to strike at logistical choke points that will be making it a lot more difficult for the Russians to successfully carry on this counteroffensive. But moving on from the area of Avdiivka and on into the rest of the news at large, it's time for us to get on into our location unknowns. And starting off with our first clip, we got to see a HIMARS shrapnel round hit a shed in the middle of a plane. We don't know where this was, but it was a pretty interesting little clip, and it showed us what the HIMARS shrapnel rounds look like when just hitting a normal shed in the middle of nowhere. And we can see it right there. We can see all the shrapnel hitting in the area, thus the tungsten ball bearings. And I wonder if the Russians even got a bearing, or had some balls to get a bearing on where that missile came from.
Nah, man, they never had it to begin with. And they can't just suddenly gain it. It's not like a hay bale doesn't spontaneously catch on fire in a barn.
Man, that would be crazy if hay bale did that, man. And then they do. That's the worst part. They actually do that. But moving on from that, and they're very nice to see the HIMARS, of course, hitting the shed. And moving on into our next clip, we got to see the Freedom of Russia Legion in training. The Freedom of Russia Legion is, I believe, about 100 to 150 strong, I think is the last number we got. It's a unit that's, of course, been used to breach the Russian border area in the Bryansk, Belgorod, and Kursk oblasts. It's done a very good job, and I gotta say, pretty interesting to see them in training as well. But here's the clip. We can see them advancing and firing
Advancing into an open field. Oh, there's the trench. I was about to say.
And we see them moving forward. This appears to be a live fire exercise. We can see the rest of the squad moving up. And also notice how a lot of these guys have M4s.
They know what's good.
Oh, they know what's good. The M4s are the best.
I don't know what it is, but it's like seeing like soldiers actually using like the AR platform versus the AK. It seems so much more controlled and like well managed than an AK.
Oh yeah, it does. We now see them standing by in the field, tossing a nade, hunkering down. And yes, another nice guy. This is training, but a live fire exercise. We now see them advancing and rapidly firing at the targets that have been set up. You now see the cameraman hanging tight to the point man. Continue to move down the trench, firing at all of the targets in the area. And that's the end of that clip, but still a very nice look at the amazing training that the Freedom of Russia Legion is going through, and hopefully this will help them out in either frontline fighting inside of Ukraine, which we don't really know that they're actively engaged in for the large part, or their continued border raids across the Ukrainian border and on into Russia. But nevertheless, moving on from that, we also have another clip of a tactical Volkswagen. A lot of y'all know that I have an aversion to the word tactical. It's just overused at this point in time. And I absolutely hate words that are just completely overused for no good reason. But one thing is very interesting is that this Volkswagen really is tactical. There's no other way to describe this Volkswagen.
Oh.
There it is.
Bus. I thought you were about to say like a Beetle or something.
No,
Man, that is crazy.
This is just insane.
Man, they took the bus that was like the symbol of the hippies and turned it into the complete opposite.
Man, the hippies are like, make love, man. And then the Ukrainians are like, make war, man. And then they set this thing up as a battle bus. I mean, that's actually pretty cool. It's pretty wild looking. And I've never seen the Ukrainians do anything like this. Of course, these aren't actual Volkswagen buses, I don't think. I think there's some other kind of a minibus. But it's still bizarre to see something like this. The weirdest of the weird. And also they got little machine gun turrets on them. So I don't know if they're planning on using these to drop off infantry on the battlefield, but it looks like that's what they would be used for, most likely. Just nuts, though. I've never seen anything like this. Moving on from that little bit of news and on into, well, actually not on into our casualty report because we already covered that. We're now going to be moving on back into the front line and moving from the northeastern area and down on into Melitopol and also into Sevastopol as well. We actually might hit Sevastopol here in a moment very quickly. You know what? Actually, we're going to hit it right now. Moving on down to Sevastopol real quick to cover some news that many of y'all have heard. Many of y'all have heard that there was a ship, a class of ship called the Project 22-160 that may have possibly been hit in the area of Sevastopol. Here's a picture of a Project 22-160. This one is in Sevastopol. That's where the picture was taken. This is the Dmitry Rogachoyev. They're all the same. They're all the same class. They all look the same. They operate the same. But one particular patrol ship that was supposedly hit and damaged was the Pavel Derzhavin, which is another Project 22-160 that is based out of Sevastopol and works with the Black Sea Fleet. Up until today, and of course y'all can already get where we're going with this, up until today, there had been no actual picture or video confirmation that the Pavel Derzhavin had been hit. There have been stories that it had blown up at its moorings in harbor and it was seriously damaged. Then the story evolved into it hitting a Russian anti-ship mine out at sea, and then it was critically damaged and no one really knew if it was sinking or if it was still afloat and just heavily damaged. Well, the answer came today from none other than the Russian government itself. The Russian government has confirmed that the Pavel Derzhavin has been damaged at sea, and we also got a video clip showing the proof of the damaged ship, with it billowing black smoke out of its stern as it started to limp its way back into the harbor, and we can see it right out there. A large pillar of black smoke coming from what appears to be the area of the engine bay, and a Ka-29 circling above, of course checking its progress on making it into the harbor. We also got some additional pictures, specifically of this ship, while it was moving into the port. We can see another one right here, and while there's a giant watermark on it, once again, notice the thick black smoke coming out of the side of the hull, and I believe that this shows that there was a direct hit to the engine bay above the waterline, and one of the main propulsion systems may be out and may be critically damaged. Of course, I'm not really a naval person. I don't know the exact schematics and layout of the internals of the Project 22-160s, but it does appear that this ship has been seriously damaged and has mostly been knocked out of combat operations until repairs can be effected on it. We don't know how long they'll take.
Also, don't you think, just looking at the ship, that it looks like that U.S. Navy vessel that got basically decommissioned because it was, not effective? It basically looks like a ripoff of one of those.
One second, I know what you're talking about. The Freedom class, the LCS-1.
Yeah, it's like that one. It's like they copied this design before they realized it was a failure.
Everyone in the world, Matthew, was racing in the naval sphere to have ships of this kind. And then everyone 5 or 10 years later went, well, we're retiring them all because they have massive structural issues and hull issues. Because apparently building ships like these is just completely unorthodox, to the point that modern metallurgy just can't support these kinds of developments in shipbuilding. We also saw that with really all of the Littoral class ships, including the LCS-2, which is the one that looks like a catamaran. Let me go see if I can I think that's the Independence class, and let me type that one in. Independence class, LCS, there we go. And this one was actually really cool. I used to be a big fan of this ship until I started to hear that apparently they were being decommissioned because they are more trouble than they're worth to even keep running in the U.S. Navy, but they were still interesting, but an absolute failure as far as their build went, how they operated. There's also been a decent amount of mechanical failures, and also, funnily enough, while the U.S. Navy has one of the largest budgets for a Navy in the world, apparently they did not have enough money to really outfit these things with the kind of weapon systems they were supposed to have, ever. None of them have
It looks like a ship that was designed with the aesthetics well over the function, because it looks really cool. But with the things I've heard about this, how many inherent flaws there are with its design, it's really just one of those examples of an engineer trying to make it look cool, but really not carrying it out all the way.
Yeah, and then the epitome of that, Matthew, and you know which one I'm about to bring up on screen. The epitome of failure is the USS Zumwalt. In the Zumwalt class destroyers. This thing is by far the coolest looking ship to ever hit the seas. I'm not even gonna lie. I think the thing looks cool as hell. Problem, however, is that it never succeeded in anything it was supposed to do. I believe its stealth profile is non-existent, and it was designed as a stealth ship. Stealth profile, from what I understand, doesn't really even exist. Cross-section's too big on it. The ship was supposed to be equipped with railguns. It never got the railguns. It still uses its conventional gun systems. It's largely a failure. I mean, there's really no reason to go through and explain everything about it that is a failure. It just is a failure. And it's another one of those ships that the U.S. Navy brought forward, trying to modernize the Navy, honestly, a little too rapidly. And now a lot of those revolutionary design ideas have been seen and proven to not really be there. And also what kind of doomed the Zumwalt is not just the fact that the railguns never came around for the ship to use, but also the prohibitive cost of building these things. They are way over budget, even to produce just 1 or 2 of these things, and we'll probably only see that there are 3 of these things in service with the U.S. Navy. Of course,
this is the ship that you might call maybe the Apple I ship or something. The way it looks, it's too minimalistic for a military vessel. Where's the guns?
Well, the guns are inside of these weird looking little pyramid things on the bow.
Is that really practical though? It's shouldn't the guns be out in the open for everyone to see?
Well, I mean, I don't really think it matters that much in a naval engagement. They are a little bit of slower battle. It's not like a Call of Duty run and gun kind of deal where the ship has to have the gun out all the time. But let me see if I can get a picture of. Also, by the way, this is how long the Zumwalt has been in the works. This was in 2008. that this picture was taken, and they had a concept model of the Zumwalt right there. But let's move on from that, and let me go and try and find y'all a picture of the guns actually brought to bear, and I don't even know if we can really get a good picture of that. Let's see here. Well, here's a picture of it by an LCS-2, and I gotta say, it does look great. I mean, I don't think anyone can deny this ship looks great. But let me see if I can get a picture of the guns brought to bear. Let me take this off screen. Let me go see.
I'll personally take one of the older ships. Personally, these designs look cool. Just from like if you were like a billionaire or something, like maybe buy one to have in your collection, but not a military ship. A military ship needs to look intimidating, and these don't look that way. They look like they're like too modern looking or something.
Yeah. Also, by the way, the pictures of the thing glistening and shining and shimmering apparently didn't last that long, because this is a picture that, from what I can tell, was taken just about 6 months ago. And the sheath cover that it has isn't really standing up too well to the elements. It's starting to look a little rusty. By the way, this thing costs $9 billion to build. You could build a Nimitz-class carrier and still have enough left over for, I think, a couple of Arleigh Burkes at this price. So, you know, once again, not really a successful ship. I'm still trying to find where the guns are deployed to show Matthew's Zumwalt-class guns.
Man, that's disgraceful, like to have rust coming off the side of the ship like that. I don't even think the old ones did that.
And, you know, funnily enough, Matthew, I can't even really find a good picture of the guns being deployed on the Zumwalt class. So let me see if I can just find one that will kind of get the idea across. This is what the guns would look like if they were brought to bear, and this is just a computer generated image of it. They sit inside these little, like, davits, and then they just pop out, and then, you know, they're able to be used. They were supposed to be railguns, and then they never worked. So anyways, with that, hope that does address that fairly well. Largely abysmal failures, and I think the Pavel Derzhavin and the Project 22-160s, like Matthew was saying, are most likely also having the same problems that we're having with the more modern designed ships, but very nice to see that one was hit and damaged. It may be knocked out indefinitely over the course of this war, because hell, there's really no place to repair the thing. And also, this was according to a Russian military blogger today, and this is his statement. About an hour ago, when leaving the Sevastopol Bay, Ukrainian formations attacked the patrol ship Pavel Derzhavin of Project 22-160. Unfortunately, the ship received damage to the rudder group. To provide assistance, a tug was sent to the Derzhavin, which was also attacked by the enemy. The ships remained underway, but the extent of the damage is unknown. What is curious about the situation is that the epicenter of the explosion was underwater. This may indicate the use of a fully submersible unmanned attack boat. This explains the absence of any opposition from the ship's crew. They were not noticed, as well as the passage of sea drones through booms. Moreover, the Ukrainian armed forces already have drones of this type. And then we can see the original Russian text of the Telegram post right there. But it appears that the Russians are going with a story that it didn't hit a Russian anti-ship mine. They're going with a story that this thing may have been hit by a Ukrainian submersible drone, which may also be true, because we haven't gotten any official Ukrainian confirmation yet about what happened to the Pavel Derzhavin, according to their side of things. But still, great to see that they're able to damage one heavily, and hopefully this will knock it out for the rest of the war, and by the time it's refurbished, the war will be over. But moving on from that, now into the northeastern area, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the frontline analysis inside of Ukraine. But before we get into that, we have a lot to talk about and a lot to cover tonight, especially not just in Ukraine, but also in Israel and around the world as well, because a lot has been going on in really every single direction. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and we have really good polls to address tonight. And our first one says, are you surprised that no terror attacks occurred in the USA today during the Day of Rage, now becoming known as the Day of Cope? 37% said no, I knew it was nothing. 29% said not really, but somewhat. 28% said yes, I thought something might happen. And 7% said unsure. And on this one, I have to say that I'm sort of in the not really, but somewhat camp. I was concerned with the widespread support we see in the U.S. for Palestine and also the Hamas terrorist group, that maybe we would see something happen in the U.S. We didn't see that, thankfully. That's a blessing for sure. But we did see overseas in France there was a stabbing, and there also was some attacks in Europe. So it appears that Europe didn't sufficiently deter anyone from doing anything, but the U.S. did. We weren't playing around. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's great that everyone largely got through the day of chaos or whatever it was going to be called on pretty much everyone survived for the most part. You know, the few people who did die was way smaller than I was expecting. I was expecting some kind of like attack where maybe 150 people would get killed or 200 people would get killed somewhere. So thankfully, it was only 1, 2, or I think about 3 people worldwide. And I don't really know the exact number off the top of my head. But beyond that, pretty happy to hear that it wasn't as major or severe as I thought it was going to be, where terrorist attacks and mass shootings were going to be happening all over the place because some group in the middle of Gaza said, hey, you know, we're kind of pissed off, so go around and cause chaos. So with that, pretty happy to see that no one responded to that call and everyone just kind of sat around and waited for something to happen and then nothing happened. And that's the way I like it. Baseless threats given by the Hamas terrorists that aren't actually followed out by anyone anywhere. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, do you think the Ukraine offensive has stalled, or is it still making acceptable progress? 36% said it's still moving, but very slowly. 33% said it's moving as fast as possible. 24% said it's stalled for the moment, and 7% said unsure. And I will have to say that even though things are heating up extremely rapidly down there in Israel, that gets people really excited. We have to keep in mind that Ukraine is still fighting a very tough battle against very heavily fortified positions that the Russians have created in their trenches. And the Russians are throwing manpower at it like never seen before. And they're basically going into the meat grinder even worse than before. That's why the losses are climbing through the roof. And Ukraine is still putting on a very good fight. The progress is not fast. We can't make any jokes about that or, you know, make light of it. It's not fast progress. But I would say we shouldn't bash Ukraine for that because they are fighting as fast as they can. And considering the circumstances, I think they're doing all they can do at the moment. But Enforcer, what say you?
And whoa, what happened? Reread the line.
Do you think Ukraine offensive has stalled or making progress?
The Ukraine offensive has stalled at this point. I'm just going to have to be entirely honest with everyone. The Rasputitsa set in. They were using a decent amount of armor in the area of Rabotny to make the gains they were getting. And now that the Rasputitsa is here, I'm going to largely expect that those kinds of offensive operations just won't happen anymore. It's almost entirely out of the question at this point that any real offensive would succeed. So I'm going to have to say that the Ukrainian offensive, as of right now, has most likely stalled. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to try and carry on an offensive in the winter and gain a little bit more ground. It's just that over this next about month and a half through October and November, we're probably not going to see anything happen from any side that actually takes ground, including the Russians at Avdiivka, who are taking unbelievably high losses in their failed offensive that was launched right at the beginning of the Rasputitsa, which was a terrible time to start it, much like it was a terrible time to start the war in early 2022, because of course they started the overall war, the invasion of Ukraine, once again in the middle of Rasputitsa season, the worst time of the year. I don't know what it is with them and picking the worst time of the year to do offensives in, but they love it, apparently, and I'm not going to complain because they screw themselves over doing it. But with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion, because, you know, love to be an optimist about the Ukrainians and, of course, support them and back them up all the way. But in our war analysis, we also want to remain as neutral and be as honest with you all as possible. And while I'm a huge, and, you know, some people say I even cheerlead about the war, and I kind of do on Ukraine's side, you know, at least as far as moral support goes. As far as the battlefield situation goes, this is mostly stalled. And we probably will see that for the next month or month and a half. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, with that being said, we are moving on to our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a massive $500 donation from Enforcer for President. A massive amount of support from a longtime channel legend, Enforcer for President. And thank you very much for throwing in that massive support and literally trying to buy stock in the channel. So thank you very much. I've used that joke so much at this time. But Enforcer says, Enforcer for President, that is, not the Enforcer. He's over there talking right now. They said, I was number 344 on the like button. And what number were you? And I think I was 1. But love Ukraine and God bless Israel. And take one from the chat. And long live the LSA.
And long live the Lee Spring Army. And thank you, Enforcer for President, for the unbelievable support. That is actually the maximum that a viewer can send in. The YouTube actually has a cap for how large a super chat can get. That's the actual complete maximum right there that you can throw in. I'm completely blown away. And I gotta thank you so much, Enforcer for President, for enjoying this channel greatly and throwing in an unbelievable amount of support. I can't even believe how big that support is. It's blowing me away right now, and I gotta thank you so much for enjoying this channel that much that you would just support us that greatly. I don't even know how to put that into words, but still, I think I don't think I even hit the like button. I never actually hit the like button on my end because Matthew does, but I never have the chance because I'm usually in the control room and in OBS trying to make sure that everything's running and saying hey to everyone, so I never really get a chance to click the like button. But
Excuse me.
damn, Matthew, you sound like some kind of a gazelle over there, Matthew. You're sitting out there in the fields, you saw a lion, you went, I was like, whoa. I was like, hey. But still, moving on from that, really cool to know that you were like number 344. And I know that someone in here was like number 1. I wonder who that was. I think it may have been Matthew, but it may have been a viewer, because I know that usually Sax2 is like one of the first people in the live chat, like one of the first 3 messages that comes in every single day. So maybe he was one of the first people to hit the like button. I'm not really sure, but still, thank you so much, Enforcer for President, for the unbelievable support and also doing your part in helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to do everything behind the scenes that we always do to make sure that this thing keeps running. And also, Slava Ukraini, and God bless Israel, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and we've got one from the chat. This one goes to Drew D, sponsored by Enforcer for President, who says, any news on how the Abrams are doing in Ukraine?
From what we understand, the Abrams have not been engaged in frontline service at the moment. They are still inside of a training field somewhere and probably engaged in some brush-up courses to make sure that the Ukrainian tankers know exactly what they're doing before they're sent out. So we haven't gotten any news on them at the moment, and also the exact information about them in training has also been very scarce as well. In fact, from what we can tell, it's non-existent as far as that information goes. That was also very similar to the Leopard 2s as well. We didn't see any information about the Leopard 2s. We knew that they had been in Ukraine since the early part of 2023, but the first time we ever really saw any footage of them was by the time the counteroffensive was about to begin in the south around June. So that may be similar with the Abrams, and the first time we actually get to see them in Ukraine is when they'll be introduced in the frontline service, which may still be a month or 2 months away from right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least with the last bits of information we have and the precedent that tanks like the Leopard 2 and the Challenger 2 laid out inside of Ukraine with how the tanks and their introduction in the service has been going, and also all of the news related to them. And with that, thank you so much once again, Enforcer for President, for the massive amount of support. I can't thank you enough for supporting this channel that greatly. Every single bit of support counts. And when people throw in massive super chats like that, it completely blows us away, because I honestly feel like we don't even deserve that kind of support to do what we do. It's just unbelievable. It's the next level kind of thing. But I got to thank you so much once again, and I'm completely blown away that you enjoy the channel that much, Enforcer for President, that you would support us that massively. And it really does blow me away. I don't even know what to say right now, but thank you so much once again. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But long live the Lee Spring Army.
All right, now next we have Snow White, another longtime channel legend, coming in for the hostile takeover, putting in a $200 donation. And thank you very much for that support, Snow White. And they said, I owe you. Any ideas into weapons that would move this far out of Ukraine, and what they really, really need? They need jets.
And I thank you for the support, Snow White, the massive amount of support as well. That's huge, and I got to thank you so much for that. And any ideas into weapons that would move this far out of Ukraine? Nuclear weapons, of course, is always a go-to. It's the easiest one. Aircraft would probably be the one that the Ukrainians need the most, however. Aircraft are going to be adding a whole new dimension to the war inside of Ukraine as we're seeing it right now. A dimension that can't even be thought about on the kind of scale that we think of right now. Many of y'all know, and we'll be getting to it later tonight, about the Israeli Air Force's attacks on the Gaza Strip. And a lot of y'all see that they are able to hit a building on a pinpoint spot to make sure that it hits a structural zone that will cause the entire building to collapse. That's, of course, brought about by the precision-guided munitions that Israeli aircraft like the F-16 are able to carry. And that's something that the Ukrainians have never had the ability to do so far in the war, is to carry precision-guided Western weaponry on modern Western aircraft, or in fact even carry Western weaponry on their older Soviet aircraft. They've never had the ability to do that. And once they get the ability to do something like that, of course, being provided F-16s and other kinds of modern aircraft, we will probably see that is the game-changing kind of a weapon system that is going to move the war out of Ukraine and on into Russia itself, and hopefully to its end. Because I can't put it out there enough, Western aircraft are a massive game changer. And a lot of people always like to try and compare Soviet-era aircraft to Western-era aircraft, even if they're from the same introduction point in history, but it's largely comparing apples to oranges. And let me go through a quick explanation as to why. We'll take the MiG-29 and the F-16s as examples. So let me try and get y'all a good picture of a Ukrainian MiG-29 right there. And let me go get a F-16C. And so let me pull up a picture of one right here. This will do. This is an F-16C, I believe, from Arizona, the Arizona National Guard. The MiG-29 was introduced into service, I believe, around the late 1970s, 1979 or 1980, something like that. The F-16 was introduced into service, its first variants, in 1975. One thing that the F-16 already has over the MiG-29 is that the Soviet Union never really advanced in computer technology. They never did. So anything that the Soviet Union produced and anything that the Russians still use today that's of a Soviet origin, it doesn't have the kind of computer systems inside of it that a Western aircraft would have. And that's something that you actually can't see looking at these pictures. You wouldn't tell that the MiG-29 has an old and inferior computer system compared to the F-16, but that's the stuff under the hood that really counts on these aircraft, and also the kind of radars they use as well, which Western aircraft, even from the start, far exceeded the abilities of any Soviet aircraft available to any post-Soviet nation right now. They're just massive bounds and leaps above anything the Soviet Union could do. That, of course, helps out with a lot of things. That helps out with flying the aircraft. That helps out with operating the weapon systems. It helps out with a variety of weapons that the F-16 can carry because the computers within the aircraft are far more advanced, and they're able to take care of doing all of this stuff and make it incredibly easy on the pilot. The MiG-29 couldn't even try and make it difficult on the pilot, impossible to operate advanced weapon systems, because the computers inside of them simply just can't handle operating modern Western equipment. And so an F-16, just on the premise alone of the more advanced technology that's present within it, that really does make it a step above any Soviet aircraft, is the reason why introducing this into Ukraine would be a massive game changer over literally any other system that we could send them at this point. F-16s would be a game-changing weapons platform. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the massive amount of support, Snow White, and helping this channel to keep on running. We are completely blown away with the massive amount of support that we've been getting tonight. Once again, I have to say, I don't really know how we even deserve that kind of support. We understand when people, of course, send in $20 and $50 super chats and even $100 super chats, because, of course, we do this as a job and keep the thing rolling. But when people send in amounts over that, we are like, oh my lord, that's unbelievable. It's honestly just so nice. I don't even understand how to put it into words, but I do thank you so much once again for the support, Snow White, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I was able to answer that question pretty concisely, but also very descriptively, so that way hopefully the answer is pretty good. But with that, thank you so much once again, Snow White, for the unbelievable support. We're incredibly appreciative of you because you're helping us to make this a job. Well, keep this as a job. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the front lines.
All right, and our last super chat of the segment goes to another longtime channel legend, Tom J. Oatley, who puts in a $100 donation, and huge shout out to Tom, and thank you very much for that very generous support. And he's also coming in for some stock. And Tom says, Enforcer Matt and Enforcer, what is your carry? And for me, I typically every day carry a Glock 43X with no mods, a stock one, because I don't trust mods on my everyday carry gun. So that's mine. I used to every day carry a Glock 19X, a full-size pistol, but that was extremely uncomfortable. So I went to a smaller one, and I like it a lot better. It has less rounds in it, but now that I've become a little bit more proficient at shooting, I don't think I need 20 rounds. I think 10 will do just fine. But Enforcer, what about you?
Man, I'd be carrying that old Colt Anaconda, baby. Did you
No,
Colt
you don't.
Anaconda?
Get out of here.
Yeah, you know I do, man. Yeah, man, you know, whenever I go anywhere outside of places that don't allow firearms, which we make sure to never carry them there, or anywhere for that matter that doesn't allow firearms, whenever I'm just traveling around in town, this is what's in the glove box of the car, is this thing, the 44 Magnum Colt Anaconda with the 6-inch barrel. It's a very good revolver. Matthew doesn't believe in 44 Magnum. I believe in 44 Magnum. Trust me, folks. I believe in this thing. 6 rounds of 44 Magnum is all you would need for any situation, especially if you're talking about self-defense. If any of y'all know, there's actually a statistic that was found out that most self-defense situations are usually resolved in 3 shots. So having a Glock with like 19 rounds in it isn't exactly necessary. So you could get away with carrying around a revolver and you would be pretty alright. So I just go with the Colt Anaconda with a 44 Magnum, and like Chi-Town Rob said, and he's got it, man. He said 44 Magnum is life. And it is. I mean, like, think about it. If someone is threatening you and you whip this thing out, to defend yourself, I think they're running before they even see what happens, because this thing is literally a small hand cannon. If you see this thing, it's huge. It's like twice the size of my hand, and I have some fairly sizable hands. This thing's huge. I mean, it's unbelievable. I gotta say, just absolutely impressive. Love this thing, and that's my carry. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, but you don't actually like carry it on you. Like when you say carry, like what do you mean?
Oh, I mean just throw that thing in my car. Obviously, I'm not clipping this to my side because this thing would pull your pants down. It's that heavy.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about like like concealed carry, like on your person type deal. The Glock 43 is real like thin, so you can like carry it in your waistband real easy. That's what I do. I don't even put it in a holster. It's just my waistband. But you couldn't even carry this, man. If you were carrying this, you'd have to like, I don't know, like put it in your pocket or something, and even at that, it's gonna kind of look a little odd, like
Man, I'm gonna give myself a suspender holster for this thing and just walk around everywhere with suspenders on, like Steve Urkel with a 44 Magnum. That would be pretty funny. And also, I saw Kaltenberg say, "Yeah, and break your wrist." Nah, man, I'm telling you, Kaltenberg. Trust me, I don't. Maybe you have shot a 44 Magnum, but for me. And Matthew can tell you this. I've actually gone to the range several times and fired this thing one-handed, in single and double action, and it's actually manageable. You can actually fire this thing one-handed, and the recoil won't break your wrist. It did bruise the webbing of my hand one time, but I kind of figured out I was gripping it a little bit too hard up near the top of the pistol grip, and that's what caused that. And then the next time I went out and shot it, I shot it and didn't even come back with any bruises on my hands, and it was completely manageable. To me, at least. I mean, it's not going to be manageable to everyone. If you're like 110 pounds and like 5'7", I would certainly not tell you to have this thing. You probably will break your wrist, or you'll probably go flying backwards or get an indent in your forehead. But being 6'2", it's pretty easy to wield this thing, for me at least. So I like it. That's my carry, Tom, and I hope that answers that fairly well. And also, Matthew, Tom is from Australia, so he's asking the question. He's like, man, what in the world is America like? And he's sitting there listening to me talk about a 44 Magnum. He's like, who the hell does this guy think he is? A wannabe Dirty Harry? And no, I don't even know who Dirty Harry really is. I've just heard him. I just saw that in the live chat. And no, I just saw this thing, and it was a 44 Magnum, and you always hear that 44 Magnum is the most powerful handgun on Earth, which it isn't anymore. That's not true. But back in the day, it was, and it's just cool to say you have a 44 Magnum revolver. So that's why I have it.
And also to the guy that said, how is it just to have like a gun like that in America? America is the place where you can walk into a gun store, literally like a GTA lobby or something,
Yeah.
and they have all kinds of guns, AKs, ARs, anything you can imagine, 44 Magnums like this, anything you are looking for, sniper rifles, anything, and you say, I'll have that one. And they'll be like, okay, here you go. They'll hand it to you. You'll answer a few questions. And you'll walk out the door with it. It's crazy. It's cool as long as a nut doesn't get their hand on a gun.
Well,
but it is super cool just to walk in there and get one.
It isn't that easy. I mean, you do have to go through a background check, and they run you through a federal background check system, which makes sure that you're not a felon or a nut or anything like that. And of course, if you falsify the form and say, and you're legally a nut and you're legally insane, and you fill out the form and say, no, I'm completely sane, it's going to show up in the database that you are medically insane and you can't own a firearm. There are limitations to it. It's just that for a lot of people, especially me, whenever I go into a gun store and I go through a background check, I think the background check at this point takes like 10 to 15 seconds once all the information is put into the online system, because I have, of course, just through the years since I've been 18, I've gotten and bought and sold so many guns over time, just collecting stuff that I guess at this point the ATF just goes, yeah, he's good. And then they just go ahead and let the background check go through. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Tom. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I addressed that the best I could. But with that, it's time for us to move on from this question segment and move back into the frontline news, starting off with the information in the Northeast. And let me take y'all up here real quick because I don't think there's been any frontline changes. Oh, wait a minute. There has been a frontline change. Near the area of Orlyanka. It appears that the Russians were able to take about a half of one field and a half of another, so about a full-sized field. But beyond that, they haven't really taken much more. So with that, that's really all the news we have from the area, and we don't even have a video clip from there today. We had one there from yesterday, though. Moving on from that and towards the area of Zalaman, we did get to see a Russian outpost get hit by a drone. And so hopefully it loads, and we can see the video loading, and it's taking a hot minute, and here we go. So here's the clip. When you see the little Russian outpost right here, and it's actually like an outpost. I would say this almost looks like a fire base in Vietnam, but an incredibly small one. When you see the Russians wandering around the fire base, is what we're going to call it. When you see some of them running down to the fire base, probably hearing the sound of the drone above and trying to find a place to cover. And now when you see the drone coming on in, we see the Russians trying to run for the... Oh! Well, that was something. I don't think we've seen that often before. And when you see this guy out here, he's whipping out the stanky leg.
Oh, no.
That's
man.
your response to that was something. But we can see them now bringing him into the fire base. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see that the Ukrainian drone was able to hit the Russian fire base. Moving on from that, we also got to see a T-90 get destroyed today in the Kremenna forest. T-90M, by the way, not just any T-90, it's the best one they have, and the most modern tank in the Russian army in the service. When you see the little T-90M scooting and booting its way through the area of the Kremenna forest, driving past the corpses of its slain brethren, the T-72 and a T-80 it seems, and we can see it get hit. Well, what do you know, fellas? Looks like that one bit the dust. Another $5 million down the drain. Actually, probably around $3.5 million. Oh, and we can see the ammunition is already cooking.
Another one bites dust.
And in the words of the Cajun guy that always shows up to every cookout here in the South, them be good eatings. But we can see that thing cooking up.
They have absolutely zero satellites on this drone.
Zero, Bliet. Zero. And you see the
still.
tank. We see the tank cooking. Oh, and well, hang on. Oh, it's showing where the tank got hit at the beginning of the clip. Showing the smoke plume. And then finally,
I feel like that Curb Your Enthusiasm music should be playing right now.
Oh, what? Oh! Little turret toss. Would you look at... so here's the T-90's hull. There's the turret. So later on, there was a turret toss involved in that, but we didn't get to see it. And also, I would say, yes, Matthew, the Curb Your Enthusiasm music needs to fit in there, but due to copyright concerns, we can't play it. But moving on from that, and out of the area of Kremenna, we are now going to be moving on down into the area of Avdiivka, where we got to see a Mista S, a $3.5 million SPG, being hit by an FPV drone, which cost about maybe like $1,000, maybe $2,000. Okay, we got some lo-fi music playing. We can see the Mista S firing right there, and the FPV drone is coming in hot. The Russians don't see it yet, and they're about to go, oh, suka, bled, kisneki da nachuй, bled. We can see the FPV drone hit, and it goes nuclear immediately. Man. Wow, that thing actually created a mushroom cloud. That's how powerful the explosion was.
The Russians be like, oh, bliat, is it illegal to use nuke? Ukraine used nuke on our soldiers. And Ukraine said, cope.
Man, they really do be saying that, you know what I mean? But You know something, Matthew, that just made me feel like they were literally fighting in hell is how flat the land is out here.
Yeah, it's like out of all the places in the field, they went to that one spot right there where the mushroom clouds at to take a nap. Like,
Man.
you could have taken a nap anywhere. Why'd you go there?
Man, the Russians sit there and they go, this tree line looks like a good spot to set up SPG, and Ukrainians with the FPV drone, welcome to hell! They're sitting there doing that thing, Matthew. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Gotta say, very nice to see, wonderful to see that they were able to take out a Mr. S in that area today. Moving on down into the southern flank of Bakhmut, really quickly going over a frontline analysis here, just to make sure we're not missing any frontline movements. No frontline movements happened in Bakhmut, but we did see some action. We got to see a Javelin destroy a Russian tank in this area today. And so, here's the clip. Okay, alright, well, that's something new. I actually haven't heard that song before. Hope we don't hear that again. But anyways, we can see the Russian tanks on the move. We can see the Javelin coming on in, and blink, and it takes one of them out.
I know we've said this before, but I have no idea what gets into the minds of the Ukrainians, like, editing these videos that put, like, rave music behind it. Like, what?
Dude, this one, man, someone was sitting there and going, you know something, man? You don't remember the Ringling Brothers Circus? And someone went, oh, I miss it. And they went, yeah. Let's make this video an homage to the musicians of the Ringling Brothers Circus, please. What the hell is that? I mean, like, that sounds like circus music to me. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Great to see a Javelin knocked out a Russian tank. But my God, the music was terrible. I'm not even going to lie. That was just bad music. Anyways, moving on from that and into the next one, we also got to see a little bit more of a serious clip. As many of y'all know, the 3rd Brigade has been fighting in the area for an incredibly long time, and of course, nothing is a cakewalk. There actually was a soldier that was a part of the 3rd Brigade, his call sign was Farsh, in the United 24 media group has made a video about Farsh and his story of his life before he, of course, met his unfortunate end on the battlefield fighting against the Russian army. I have to say that the video was very moving, and it's always great to know that we can work with United 24 media, of course affiliated with United 24 and directly under their United 24 umbrella, to make sure to spread the stories of amazing soldiers like Farsh right here. And so with that, here is the clip. And let me let everything load. Let me close that, and here we go.
When it all began, I realized that I finally could give them hell. The first fight was a disappointment. I didn't neutralize any enemy.
His Instagram profile description reads, "Better let them know I died than that I capitulated." The fighter of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, called Farsh, has earned the King of Assaults and God of War nicknames. And here is his history.
When we moved on to the assault, fellas drove to the right, but I was a little bit peculiar. Therefore, I went slightly to the left, and I found myself in the middle of their position. We planned that I was supposed to come, and here they are. But turns out, they're here and here and here. Well, it was cool.
Oleksandr Farsh is from Odessa. He went to fight immediately after the full-scale invasion had begun.
When it all began, I realized that I finally could give Russians hell. All these years before that, I didn't go to fight, but they were driving me nuts. Because they kept saying that Ukrainians were misfits, and Odessa and Kherson are Russian cities. This was a chance to penalize them.
His first battle was one of those that shaped the fate of Ukraine. The small village of Moshchun was the key to the capture of Kyiv in the first weeks of the big war.
I've understood nothing much yet, but wanted to fight. I couldn't sleep for a few days until they let me fight. They said that there were Russians in the private sector hiding somewhere amidst houses. I thought, finally, Russian invaders. But they were so
anxious.
Wretches died, and those who...
Man, this guy, he sits there and he hears, Russians in my backyard? And it's like, oh, it's like, man, this guy's pretty adamant about this whole thing. You know, he's into it.
All the other Ukrainians are like, oh man, the Russians are invading, we're going to go fight. Well, we got to do what we got to do. Meanwhile, this Farsh fellow is like, oh, the Russians in the backyard. Did they just arrive? Did they arrive just now? Oh,
man, this guy sits there and, dude, everyone sits there and goes, this war is nothing to laugh about. Meanwhile, this guy, We outflanked them. Watch this, guys. Pulls out an RPG and shoots it straight into an outpost or something.
He said, I'm a little peculiar. I made a left and ended up right in the middle of an ambush. It was the happiest day of my life.
Dude, I gotta respect this guy's spirit, man. Like, if anyone on the front line was like embodying the spirit of how we report the news on this channel, it was Farsh. He was certainly embodying like our channel spirit on just trying to keep things uplifting, although it was very tough in the middle of the war. So with that, we're gonna get back to the clip, but still pretty interesting to hear that this guy was really into fighting the Russians.
Survived, ran away. I even couldn't enjoy my first fight. The first fight was a disappointment. I didn't neutralize any enemy. Not enough action.
Farsh remembered, in those battles, there were very motley divisions who resisted elite Russian troops.
For protection, I had only a helmet and fingers crossed for luck. I had an AK rifle on my back, RPG-7, and markets played back with 6 shots. We went to Moshchun on the yellow Bogdan bus.
Bogdan is a popular Ukrainian brand of share taxi. However, even in such conditions, motivated Ukrainians managed to protect the capital.
There were very cool Russian paratroopers. I saw a grown-ass man heavily armed and well-trained. But perhaps...
Man, did he really just say that?
He's talking like some Americans or something, the way they talk. Like he was talking like street talk. Man, it was a grown-ass man out there. I whipped his ass.
Man, he said, I was out there on the front lines, and there was some shells flying over me and blowing up and everything. It was pretty wicked. And then I just saw this grown-ass man. Like, it's like, dude, that is a far cry from most people who sit there and go, we engaged them in the operational zone across the line of departure in the area of 441-5973. Hey, this guy's sitting there, I saw a grown-ass man. It's like, I respect this, man. I like this guy.
His day.
After that, Farsh got to the Zaporizhia direction. He liked that even more.
Then I realized what it is to lay someone out. I wanted to destroy those who came to my home and decided for some reason,
wild.
This is my forestation. No way, it's mine.
All in all, Farsh, in the composition of the legendary 3rd Assault Brigade, fought in the Kiev, Zaporizhia, and Kherson directions. Almost instantly, Farsh got his call sign.
At first I thought to choose the Born to Kill nickname and fill the helmet with bullets, like in the Full Metal Jacket movie, but I didn't want to plagiarize. Farsh call sign was given to me by my comrade from Azov. I just like feeling fear, danger, and adrenaline. Someone breaks into a sweat, but I get high from it. That's why I got this call sign, Farsh.
All Alexander's comrades in arms do is note his fearlessness and willingness to follow till the end.
If I saw someone on the enemy's side who acted like me, I'd change my position. Because it's too brazenly. You come under fire but rise to full growth and respond with a PK machine gun. I suspect they have to think on the opposite side, what the hell and why is he not scared?
His own words, Farsh proved practical.
Dude, this guy isn't just talking for the hell of it, man. This guy is like legit. Like, this guy is actually like crazy. Like, it would be scary to go up against this guy out there on the battlefield.
Yeah, like I would too. Like this guy seems like he's got that like that old time like Sparta type mentality. He's not scared of anything. Man, he's seeking out fights.
Man, he was seeking them. That's all I gotta say, man. And huge respect to him too.
Practically many times. The video when he runs along 4 Station with the machine gun is titled An Illustrative Example of Effective Dynamics of Combat, in my opinion. Farsh's fearlessness is what quickly made...
Man, you see something here? I just gotta say this real quickly. We get bashed so much whenever I say in my opinion because everyone says it's a cop-out. But this guy is literally clearing out Russian trenches single-handedly. And then he sits here and goes, an illustrative example of effective dynamics of combat, in my opinion. I gotta respect that. It's a light cop-out, but it's one that's made in a lot of confidence on his end for sure.
Farsh's fearlessness is what quickly made him a legend of the Ukrainian military community. Dozens of media published his quotes from the big interview for his own 3rd Assault Brigade.
I don't even think about death. I'm just not afraid to die. Besides, most likely it will be quick.
Alexander thought about war even on rotation.
During my vacation, I train, eat, sleep, and strive to come back. The truth is that the perfect vacation for me would be at the front, with the Max Pro and minigun from the USA. Max
Hey,
Pro
good
is
choice.
almost
I like it.
invulnerable,
He's
and
got solid
minigun is
options.
mega rapid firing. With the battalion
Whoa, wait a minute. Hold up. That thing would not be that big on top of a Max Pro, okay? Miniguns are actually, a 7.62 minigun is actually pretty small. I mean, this thing is like the 20 millimeter, like, I think it's not the M61 Vulcan, but it's like, this one's almost the one you would use on an F-16 or a M163 Pivots or something. Like, that is not a normal minigun that this guy is talking about, so the modeling there is a little off, but, you know, hey, it's a quick model.
minigun is mega
This
rapid
this fella
firing.
here, he may be Ukrainian, but he's American at heart, because to get an MRAP as your vehicle and try to put a minigun on top of it and talking the way he's talking grown ass man and stuff like that. this dude is from the South. Like he must have some relatives here.
Man, you know, you're about to watch him here in a minute, Matthew, in the clip. He's going to pull out a 10 of Copenhagen, flick that thing around a little bit, and then get a dip. Like, he's about to do that in a minute. He's going to go, shit, man, we were out there dealing with grown-ass man. Like, spit into a spittoon, but...
Battalion commander who says, let's go and crush that strip. I would go and cut it off at the roots. Burn old dugouts and bring the best trophies. That would be a real vacation.
Moreover, Farsh has already experienced similar moments. After one of the attacks, he broke into the Russians' position with the tanker of the 3rd Brigade and forced the whole enemy division to run away. At that moment, Alexander was wounded. Before the grenade had exploded in a couple of yards in front of him, he miraculously left unharmed. During this audacious tank's attack, he was covered with shards.
I ran my hand like this and found that all my ass was covered in blood. Imagine 2 hedgehogs on your buttocks and they're pricking constantly. Even now, this feeling is like I sat on a hedgehog, cause shards stuck into the body. I even go to the toilet less often, and I'm so mad because of this. That's why I want to go on the assault so badly. I just have a lot of fur in my body, but doctors plucked all of it. I think it was even more painful than my
For
wound.
the Ukrainian victory and liberation of Ukrainian territories from occupiers, Farsh didn't care of himself. Recently, fate didn't save him either. In the middle of September, it became known that Alexander died at the Bakhmut direction. He was 30 years old. He left behind his wife and small daughter. Better let them know I died than that I capitulated. He didn't capitulate.
Listen, I would typically be sad over that, and it is unfortunate, but that guy literally did what he wanted to do. Like he died the way he wanted to go out.
Man, he died doing what he wanted to do. And of course, like Matthew's saying, usually we would have a very somber tone at the end of this video, or a video like this talking about the death of a Ukrainian soldier. But this man went out there with the intent of giving the Russians hell, and he meant whether he died or not, he was going to be remembered as one of the finest soldiers of the Ukrainian army. And I think that it would be a disservice to say sad mentions of his death. This man fought and died like a legend for the Ukrainian army, and he should be remembered in the highest praise in the Ukrainian armed forces for the kind of fighting spirit that he had. It's very similar to that of Daniel Daly or Chesty Puller, which a lot of y'all who are Marines probably know their stories because, you know, they are very similar to that. But, you know, of course, in the U.S. But still, that was an amazing guy right there, and one hell of a story. Unfortunate to know that he's gone, but he certainly made his impact on the war. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that absolute legend, Farsh, and I hope that whenever y'all look at the area of the southern flank of Bakhmut, y'all think of guys like Farsh, because there's a lot of folks like him in the 3rd Brigade that are still fighting on that front line right now. But moving on past the Avdiivka area and the Bakhmut area, we're now moving on down to Marinka, where we got to see a clip today of some Russian forces being destroyed. We're going to be muting that. And we see a Russian vehicle moving down the street. We can see a lot of guys sitting on top of it. That's not 5 guys, and this certainly isn't burgers and fries. This is high explosives and pain. And we can see the high explosive hit the back of the BMP, setting the thing on fire, and people are jumping off. We now see folks running for the hills, and they drop a second bomblet in the middle of them just to remind them things are never going to be that fun. For them, at least. We now see more Russians running away. We can see that the BMP was filled with them. And we now see another bomblet being dropped, this one landing right in between the two vehicles and taking a guy with it. We can see that one's actually created a smoke ring. Pretty nice. We now see the drone watching as the Russians flee into every direction. The Russians said, "Scram!" and they just started running everywhere. And now we can see that they're just picking out a supply truck to pick on, destroying it in the meantime. And we can see another, well, actually, it's the same BMP getting double tapped. Double tap is a pretty good strategy to use in wars like these. And we can see that they've caused a decent amount of damage to the Russian army in this area. And we can see that they're still going to conduct even more damage. We see the Russians trying to figure out what to do. Just, wandering around, doing their thing. And we can see at the bottom it says something about a 20 alternative, and also 10 Porandiv something. And so we would assume about 30 Russians wounded or sleeping. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see a Russian tank burning inside the town of Marinka today as well. I would like to see a Russian tank burning in the streets as well. And so here's the clip. There is the Russian tank. Okay, well.
Whoa, man, watch the language, man.
Jeez, language. There are children around here. War is one thing, profanity is another. Control your speech.
Listen, children, don't cuss. Now watch this bomb.
Now watch this drive, y'all. But we can see the T-72 blow up, and it's gone. Absolute shot pilled and best, y'all. But still, very nice to see the T-72 get hit and blown up. Of course, another Russian tank that won't be used again. Moving on from that clip, and on out of the Marinka area, it's now time for us to drop by Konstantinivka. Oh, wait, hang on, I did it wrong. I went to the second part first. Like, Zoink Scoob, we've been recruited into the artillery. Raggy, critical coordinates. But here's the clip.
Подключаем питание к ракете. Фидос, да.
Like, Zoink Scoob,
Фидос
I
готов.
don't think the van's gonna survive.
Фидос, огонь.
Raggy, homelessness. This does not look stable.
Залпом, залпом, залпом. Хорошо.
Is that a mannequin attached to the front of this van? But anyways, moving on from that. There you go, Scooby-Doo MLRS. Moving on from that into the area Star Manivka, we also got to see an FPV drone hitting some Russian forces in the area. Whoa. When you see
like Bill Nye the Science Guy is about to come out and tell us what's going on.
You got a good point right there. I was actually about to say that sounds like that Cartoon Network break thing that they used to have back in their late 2000s. You know, when they'd sit there and have the little wind-up toys walking around and they go, "You're watching Cartoon Network," or something like that. You know, it kind of sounded like that to me. But anyways, we can see the FPV drone coming in on the BTR. Oh, and plenty of Russians on that BTR. Looks like many of them will be enjoying the nice, warm drone and its welcoming reception to the lands of Ukraine, where they'll stay permanently. Moving on from that and into our next clips of news in the area around Verbove, we also got to see some Ukrainian forces advancing in the area of Verbove past a knocked-out Marder infantry fighting vehicle. Well, you see the burning Marder right there as the Ukrainian forces continue to move on down the road past the burning APC towards the area of Verbove. Hopefully everyone was able to bail out. with that, that's the end of that clip. And moving on from that and on to the next one, we also got to see a Russian tank knocked out in this area as well. Oh, that sounded classical. That we've never heard music like that before. That's actually kind of up my alley. But we can see the Ukrainian tank. Wait, hang on. Sorry, that's the Russian tank advancing. The Ukrainians are about to take it out, though. And we see them continuing to fire into the tree line where Ukrainian forces might be. And we can see it continuing to fire into the tree line. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. Let me make sure I'm getting this right. Oh, okay, sorry, correction. The tanks and APCs are Ukrainian. They're actually hitting Russian forces inside of the tree line. Sorry, everyone, I misread that earlier. We can see a white phosphorus shell explode somewhere in the background, setting up a smoke screen, either for the Russians to retreat through or to help screen a Ukrainian advance in another direction. See the Ukrainian tank continuing to fire through the length of the tree line, and we can now see the BMP-2 opening up with its 30mm 2A42 autocannon and laying down some more fire. We can see them all just going to town, doing work, and we can now see the Ukrainians have entered the trenches, and they are going to start clearing the place out. They're going to clear it out like that attic that you've left alone for about 20 years, and there's a couple of $20 bills up there, and you're desperate for cash. They are going to be clearing it out just like that. And we can see that they're really putting in the effort. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
Look at them. Look at them go.
Man, those Russians are booking it. And that's the end of the clip, but a great way to end it with the Russians running for the hills, or more so just other fields. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see the 47th Brigade attacking the Russians down here. Look at him go. Look at him go. He's running into a dugout. This is always the beginning of disaster. And we see more of them scurrying their way down the trenches. Like rats to the sewers, or whatever. You know, I'm trying to come up with something new to say. But we can see them all doing their thing. Crawling in. Hey, Walter A. Lakota's here. Hey, welcome. Welcome. But we can see the, oh heavens. Oh, good heavens.
My. What a tragedy.
Oh, my. And I gotta say, that was pretty messed up. They socked him up in the jaw. But anyways, moving on from that, we're now going to be moving out of the area of Robotny. No frontline advances there today, just, you know, action. And then in Melitopol, we also got to see a bridge destroyed over train tracks. Sounds like the beginning of some kind of a goofy romance novel or a country song where they sit there and talk about, I am Triac, P-42, Phase 5, railroad coaches, poor pay, long hours, you know, something like that. But
yeah. Little whiner.
See the railroad tracks? We can see the destroyed bridge over railroad tracks.
This is a bridge over troubled dirt.
Bridge over troubled tracks. Now listen to this song, fellers. Bling bling. I call this one Bridge Over Troubled Tracks. Ba-dum-dum-dum-dum. Pickup truck, destroyed bridge, ruin Russian logistics systems. But anyways,
Bull crap pay.
Crap pay, no work, living off the land, drinking Coca-Cola.
Depression.
You know, just listing off crap like it's a shopping list. You know, country music really is just shopping lists at this point, isn't it, Matthew? Like, they sit there, you know, before you go to the farmer's feed, I got a song for you. Ba-dum-dum-dum-dum, 50 pounds, chicken feed, you know, something like that. But
Depression,
anyway.
Psychiatrist, psychotic drugs, and bing, 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 bing.
Hardcore depression, living on the farm. Anyway,
moving on to liquor, bing, bing, bing.
Thoughts of darker things, better times. But anyways, moving on from that, it's now time for us to get on out of the Ukraine war segment and on into Israel. Moving on into Israel, things today were a lot more tame than other days. We really don't have a lot to cover beyond, of course, rocket attacks still occurring on Tel Aviv. We did get to see the Iron Dome intercept some of those missiles that have been fired all the way up there. We hope Yuri Bench is okay because he's one of our Israeli viewers. We hear the air sirens wailing. We can see the Iron Dome missile flying to intercept the Hamas rocket. And it got it. Nice little hit right there. But once again, a little bit of action over Tel Aviv. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see just some general pictures of the war in Israel. And these were pretty interesting. We got to see a Israeli F-15 being loaded up with the big bomb. These look to be like maybe 2,000 pounders, perhaps. We can also see in the next picture an F-16D with the conformal fuel tanks, really cool, loaded up with bombs as well. We can also see a load of Merkavas right there, really cool, and also some APCs. We can also see an Israeli F-15A. This is actually one of the earlier versions of the F-15. Still, we can see it loaded up with bombs. It's obviously going on a bombing campaign. We can see a, let's see. We see an Israeli soldier. I had to read the caption on that one real quick to try and make sure that we're getting things right here. We can see an Israeli soldier crying after seeing some of the sites of the areas that they're clearing out of Hamas terrorists. We can see the Israeli Special Forces, like we saw yesterday, clearing the compound near the Gaza border. We can also see a hardened shelter with an F-16 inside. Well, actually, that is an F-16D. It has the tandem cockpit. And we can see them loading up bombs onto the jets. We can see an M109 Paladin moving down the highway in the area. Some Humvees with IDF soldiers in them. That picture actually goes hard right there. I'm not even going to lie. Moving on from that, we can also see more IDF soldiers. We can see them near a wall. It says it's near Kfar Aza. Sadly, we weren't able to geolocate that. We can see more IDF soldiers set up near a building. Of course, airstrikes being conducted by the IDF on what's supposed Hamas sites. We can also see an AH-64A Peten taking off, most likely to go on some kind of a support mission. We can see it's loaded up with Hellfires, giving us a pretty good idea. It's probably going to be hitting precise targets. We can also see an F-16, well, a Nets, I believe that would be, heading out to go on its mission. We can also see all the leaflets that the Israelis dropped today over the Gaza Strip, as well as IDF soldiers moving through the area of the West Bank, I believe. We can also see another Merkava on the move. We can see an M109 Paladin providing fire support. And then finally, we can see the port of Gaza being hit in this picture right here. This actually occurred, I think, about 2 days ago. Moving on from that and into the actual area of the Gaza Strip where most videos and action happen today, we did see down here some pretty interesting things. Starting off with the Hamas firing a specially designed rocket. This thing did get shot down, but it flew over 100 miles, almost all the way into, I believe, Tel Aviv. And let me make sure I know where Safad is. And so, Safad, where is Safad? Let me just type it in. Or Safed. I think that's probably how it's pronounced. So, correction, I believe this one actually would have been fired. I don't really know. Let me check. Let me check some distances here. Measure distance. Actually, yeah, it was fired from the Gaza Strip and almost flew all the way over Israel, all the way to Safed, and then it was shot down in this northern area. But here's the rocket that flew pretty much all the way over Israel right here. We see them showing it off like it's some kind of a prize piece. There it goes. And this thing ended up flying almost all the way over Israel. And there it goes again. And I gotta say, that's pretty impressive for a souped-up Estes rocket, because that's really all that Hamas makes are sugar-based propellant rockets, and somehow they're able to soup some of them up where they can pretty much fly all the way over Israel. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the Israeli Air Force hitting Hamas rocket sites while they were in operation. This was actually pretty wild to see, as we can see that they're hitting bases down there, and we can also see a Hamas rocket launcher right there. The Israeli Air Force, of course, is beginning to target the site and getting ready to take it out while it's in operation. And we can see them now striking that specific side of the town as well, hopefully knocking out the terrorists in the area as well as the rocket launcher. This also appears to have been very close to the shoreline. We see the Israeli bombardment continuing, but nice to see that they are actually going out of their way to hit Hamas sites like that. That was a confirmed Hamas site that we did see getting hit right there. So good to see. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw that they dropped leaflets over Gaza today in hundreds of thousands of them, telling people to leave the area immediately. We can actually see these leaflets coming down in a massive cloud right there. It's actually pretty wild to see leaflets dropped in mass like this. It's very rare to see in a modern war.
Also, fun fact, since you're watching this on YouTube on a live stream, this is absolutely going to wreck the video quality because of the compression algorithm they use.
Really?
Yeah. Now, you hadn't seen that Tom Scott video about that? Like the confetti in the videos, it ruins video quality?
I did not know that. That's actually really interesting. Man, it's quiet in Gaza. Oh, look, Hamas is firing off more rockets.
Got loud. How do they just have, like, you know, what type of rockets are these?
From what we understand, these are some kind of, like, I don't even know how to describe it, like, improvised rockets with, like, you know, that Tom Scott video, the King of Random, not the Tom Scott video, the King of Random, I forgot his name, but, you know, the guy who died in the unfortunate parachuting incident?
Yes.
You know how he showed how to make the sugar-based propellant for your homemade rockets?
Right.
From what we understand, that's what Hamas is doing, and that's also why these things have the very distinct and thick white smoke trail, is because they're using a somewhat similar propellant.
And how is Gaza going to pretend like they don't know these terrorists are operating right here? Because they're shooting them off right in the middle of their place.
Yeah, that's the thing, you know, that's probably the reason why Israel isn't really playing nice with Hamas or the Gazan civil administration, is because it would be pretty hard to say that you don't know what's happening here.
Also, rest in peace to Grant from the King of Random. I think that's who you're referencing.
Yeah, Grant Thompson. Yeah, that's who it was. He was a great guy. I thought his channel was amazing, but sadly he got killed in a parachuting accident years ago, which was so unfortunate because I think he had actually just gotten the news that him and his wife were going to have a child, and then he ended up dying in an accident, which was just unfortunate. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we also saw that a Gaza tunnel was hit inside of the city of Gaza. Well, a Hamas tunnel was hit in Gaza today by Israeli forces, and here's the clip. And from what we understand, these are manhole covers that are exploding because of the munitions blowing up inside of the tunnel. And so you can kind of get an idea of how many munitions were stored inside that tunnel just off of the force of the explosions that's coming out of the manhole covers. And so with that, that's the end of that clip right there. And we're now going to be moving on from that and into our last clip inside of Israel, inside the Gaza Strip, where we saw Israel hitting more of the Gaza Strip overnight. This actually was released from the Israeli Air Force itself, showing them continuing strikes and attacks against buildings that supposedly house Hamas weaponry and equipment. Oh, did you see that, Matthew? The power flickered, and that scared me.
I didn't see it.
In my room, the lights flickered, and I was like, huh? I was like, oh no. We see the strikes occurring all over the place. Of course, the Israeli Air Force making sure to be as thorough as possible, and hopefully trying to avoid civilian casualties as best as they can.
There's some pretty big bombs they're using.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really hold back. I think they're using 1,000, 2,000 pound JDAMs every single time. They don't use small bombs at all, from what I can tell. That's the end of that clip, but still interesting to see the Israeli Air Force conducting strikes against supposed Hamas targets inside of the Gaza Strip. With that, it's now time for us to move on north to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on the 597th day of the war in Ukraine. And so, without further ado, here's the speech. And from what I can understand, this is probably inside of Odessa, just based off the background. But here is the speech. And let me make sure it's in
speech.
And here we go.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні робочий день в нашому місті в Одесі. Візит Марка Рюте, прем'єр-міністра Нідерландів, його команди наші перемовини. Є рішення щодо ракет для Петріотів. Нідерланди дають додаткові ракети. Ми сьогодні обговорили з Марком і інші спільні кроки для оборони України. Окрема увага з захисту Одеси, усього нашого півдня. Від Дунайських портів до портів Великої Одеси обговорили захист наших коридорів експорту у Чорному морі. Світ визнає глобальну роль України, гаранта продовольчої безпеки і чітко підтримує те, що ми маємо зберегти і посилювати. Це наше значення. Від української сили прямо залежить соціальна стабільність багатьох країн. Сьогодні були в Одеському порту, були доповіді військових, урядовців щодо нашої поєднаності зі світовим ринком та захисту української акваторії Чорного моря. Провів нараду щодо ситуації в Одеській області із керівниками правоохоронних органів, представниками обласної влади, військовим керівництвом. Ключове – це, звичайно, підготовка до зими, захист енергетики, відновлення того, що було зруйновано російськими ударами. Я вдячний усім, хто працює, щоб наші люди були захищені. Пройти зиму, дати потужну відповідь на російські удари в Одесі і по Одеському регіону, по містам області, всієї України. На це зараз направлена робота усіх в системі влади та наших дипломатів. Буде більше захисту нашій державі. Мав честь сьогодні відвідати наших воїнів, які відновлюються після поранень. Разом з Марком були у них, поспілкувалися. І я відзначив військових та лікарів, які їм допомагають державними нагородами. Зустрілися з вихованцями військової академії в Одесі. Хороша розмова. Дякую вам, хлопці, за вашу увагу, за ваші запитання. Хлопці, дівчата, молодці. Сьогодні ж з Одеси звернувся до учасників зустрічі об'єднаних експедиційних сил. Це формат регіональної співпраці на півночі Європи. Сполучене Королівство, Швеція, Данія, Естонія, Фінляндія, Ісландія, Латвія, Литва, Нідерланди, Норвегія. Зустріч відбулась на шведському острові Готланд. І це вагомий сигнал, дуже символічне місце для розмови лідерів про безпеку Європи та довготривалий надійний захист наших країн, наших людей. Якщо поглянути на мапу, то можна одразу зрозуміти, чому російські державні пропагандисти закликали захопити цей острів Готланд. Це контроль над усім регіоном. І цей регіон Росія теж намагається дестабілізувати. Коли я звертався до шведського парламенту у 22-му році, на початку повномасштабної війни, я говорив саме про це, наскільки важливо бути сильним усім в Європі, в усіх частинах континенту, в кожній такій стратегічній точці, як Готланд, від якої залежить спільна безпека. І, до речі, я вдячний за сьогоднішню підсумкову заяву зустрічі лідерів об'єднаних експедиційних сил. Сильна заява, підтримка України, зокрема підтримка на шляху в НАТО та чітке засудження російської агресії та готовність допомагати нам так, як потрібно для перемоги в війні. Дякую. Ще кілька речей. Сьогодні з Молдовою підписано протокол щодо спільного контролю на кордоні в пункті пропуску для залізниці Кучурган-Новосавицьке. Це ще один маршрут нашого експорту, додатковий транспортний коридор, який точно посилить увесь наш регіон. Дякую вам, Молдова. І хочу подякувати сьогодні нашим воїнам, саме тим, які захищають наше небо, зокрема на півдні держави, наші вогневі групи, 13-й окремий зенітний кулеметний батальйон, 5-та бригада Нацгвардії та 14-та радіотехнічна бригада. Дякую вам, воїни. Слава усім, хто б'ється заради України. Дякую всім, хто допомагає нам. Дякую тобі, Марку, за візит та перемовини сьогодні, за всю підтримку. І дякую тобі, Одеса. Обов'язково ми відновимо все, що зруйнувала Росія. Слава Україні!
And Herom Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 597, and that is beginning the second half of this stream. we're going to be addressing all of the super chats and live chats that have come in, as many live chats as we can, of course, in every super chat. And we'll also be addressing all of our polls as well. But before we get into that, I once again have to rally the Lee Spring Army into hitting the like button. We are up to 2,700 likes right now, and every single like counts. And so please make sure to hit the like button. It does help out this channel massively, and also makes us really happy to see that a lot of people do enjoy this channel. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And so with that, we have some really good polls to address. And our first one says, some analysts say widespread war resulting from Israel's invasion of Gaza is 50% likely. So it's half and half. And what are your thoughts? 42% said I agree with that. 29% said I disagree, the odds are lower. 16% said I think the odds are even higher. And 13% said unsure. And obviously that is a little bit vague to simply say a widespread war, but that is all we have to go on at the moment. That is the opinion of the analysts who are supposedly in the know. So take that with a grain of salt. But me personally, I think the odds probably are somewhere around 50% or so. The risk of escalation here because of this situation in Israel is very high because of all the interest of larger countries like Russia, the U.S., China, etc., also Iran, having this conflict. There's a lot of interests that are conflicting here, and when stuff like that starts happening, you have the risk of a wider war breaking out because, you know, there might be accidents here or there where some people get attacked, they don't like it, then it breaks out even worse than that, and, you know, it's common sense, it might get very bad. So, you know, I don't think this is fear-mongering, I think this is reality, and we should probably just come to accept that reality. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it probably is reality at this point that the war in Israel is probably going to be becoming a larger region-wide conflict. The area is an incredibly volatile one, of course. Everyone knows that, and I have a feeling that that's not going to be subsiding, especially now. So I would have to agree. I think it will probably become a larger region-wide conflict, and it probably will draw the Western world into it just because we have to be there, as usual. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, U.S. intel has confirmed that North Korea has sent 300 freight cars of munitions to Russia, and what are your thoughts? 44% said it's frustrating and the West needs to act. 39% said it won't change anything for Russia. 11% said this is very bad for Ukraine, and 6% said unsure. And just remember that when they say 300 freight cars, they didn't tell us exactly what was in those freight cars. And considering that North Korea has very subpar and a very poor military stockpile, even for their own active duty military, if you can call that one, I wouldn't put too much stock in its like high quality, high value weapons. It's probably very cheap stuff. And, you know, the cheap weapons do work, but they're not very reliable. So it is bad, but it's not as bad as it seems. But Enforcer, what say you?
1 second, I'm actually going to try and look up something here, and let's see how much tonnage. And dang, they're not making that easy, are they? Nope, they're not making it easy. So let's go here. How Russian freight car. 1 second, I want to get a good answer to this. United Wagon Company. Oh, bled. How much can I cut it, bled? I don't want to know about the damn company. I want to know about the railroad car. Well, let's see here. How many? Let's freight.
You know, while you're looking that up, just a question I have in the back of my mind. I remember about 10 years ago or so, Vice News, back when it was doing really good journalism, it's kind of getting back there now, but not really. They went out and interviewed the people at these North Korean, like, labor camps out in the middle of nowhere in Russia, like on the border. Excuse you. I wonder if there's still that going on to a large degree. And if it is still happening, I wonder if they're like going down there, the Russians are, and like taking those people out of the camps and putting them into the military.
I wonder. That's a good question. And also, I found a number: 165,000 pounds in a single railroad car. So, 165,000 times 300, that would be 49.5 million pounds. So let's divide that by 2,000, and I think that would be 2,000 pounds does equal a ton, I believe, right?
I'm pretty sure.
So that would be 24,750 tons of equipment, or munitions more so. So 24,750 tons of equipment. And let me do this real quick. Weight of grad rocket. 66.6 kilograms. And what in the world does that translate to? 66.6 66.6 kilograms, 2 pounds, and that would be 146 pounds. Actually, 147, we'll round it up, divided by 147. So that means, that's interesting. Oh, hang on, hold up, wait a minute, I did the math wrong. Damn it, man, damn it. Okay, so hang on. 160,000 times 300 divided by 147. So that means that in those railroad cars, they would be able to transport 326,530 MLRS rockets just in those rail cars. Once again, this is some very rough math, very, very rough math, and I feel like it's probably not correct. But with that in mind, we can get an idea that that probably might be a serious ordeal, especially considering if that was kept up over a long period of time, and maybe we can hopefully put an end to that. But I got to be quite honest with y'all, the math is off. I already know that. A lot of y'all are already saying I did the math wrong. Yep, I know. So with that, I hope that addresses that somewhat well, trying to do a little bit of math. Of course, you got to try and crank out the math behind the scenes and, spend time on it. But with that, I hope that does address it fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And Enforcer, real quick, I'm just curious if you can see this. I just learned that you can spam the hell out of the emoji button on the side of the chat box. Like, can you see the 100s coming in like at 100 miles an hour right now?
Yeah, I can.
Look,
I'm putting them in too. Look, I'm throwing them in.
Man, that is wild. I did like 1,000 of them like under a minute just a second ago. I didn't know if anybody could see that or not, but that's pretty cool. That's actually spam that I would encourage that spam.
Yeah.
Because that's not messing anything up. That's crazy. It's like flooding in like wild on the right side of the chat box.
Man.
But anyway,
slam it.
Slam it. Slam that emoji button. I prefer the 100 to be honest. But anyways, with that, we are moving into our super chat questions. We are fresh out of poll questions, and we're going to start off with a $20 donation from Drunky Monkey. And Drunky Monkey did not leave a comment with this one, sadly. But Drunky, thank you very much for that support, and always been a long-time channel viewer. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, Drunky Monkey, and helping the channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support does help us to keep doing this as a job. And we are greatly appreciative to everyone in the Lee Spring Army who throws in support to help this channel to keep on running. Y'all help us to keep this thing ad-free and sponsor-free each and every day, and allow us to be able to do this as a full-time job and cover the news. Some people out there find it an offense that we sit here until we address every single person who supports this channel and thank them personally for their support. I would counter that by saying I don't like the idea of pissing on supporters' heads when they go out of their way to support a channel with hard-earned money and then not to even give them a thanks for it and just act like you deserve it. That seems really messed up to me. I don't know about y'all. That's why we always spend so much time after the news segment always going through and addressing every single comment that y'all have, every single question, and also naming each of y'all off who've thrown in support, even if it's just $1, just because I find that to be the right thing to do, to thank each and every one of y'all individually, no matter how big or how small, for helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Drunky Monkey. I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you for being a longtime viewer of the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, also a longtime channel viewer, who puts in a $15 donation. And Margaret says, my fine for missing yesterday's stream. And Margaret is paying fines now. My goodness. She says, sorry, today I learned Italian firearms manufacturer Beretta has supplied weapons in every major European war since 1650. And did you buy a gift from me for parent?
Oh, I think we haven't yet. I'm trying to think. I'm straining my brain here, Matthew. Did we?
Dang, Enforcer sounded shocked. He's like, what?
Oh man, like
we haven't yet. Sadly, we haven't had the chance. We've been swamped. Like it was another 5:30 a.m. morning for me this morning, and I got to sleep at 1. And literally, I had a professor today ask me, I don't know how are you keeping this up? Like, I don't understand how you're keeping this up. I was like, oh yeah, we're keeping it up somewhat. I said, also, we added Israel to our coverage. She's like, what? You added something to it? I was like, yeah. She was like, how in the world are you going to manage that? I was like, I don't know, but we'll figure it out.
Because I'd be crazy, man. Like, honestly, we work too much, to be quite honest. Like, but I'm at the same time, I'm not one to whine and be a victim and be a wimp. So we just keep it going. But to be quite honest with y'all, tonight I'm really feeling it. I feel burned out I felt burned out as soon as the stream started tonight, but I had made a promise. I made the promise before Matthew was even here that we would run this thing until the war was over. And then Matthew got thrown into that promise before he even existed. So we've got to keep this thing running at this point. So sadly, we haven't been able to get a gift for them yet. And also, our dad is pretty busy right now, traveling all over, and our mom is also not even here right now. She's also traveling all over. So it would be very tough to get them a gift, but we will try and get them one here soon, hopefully. Also, I did know that Beretta supplied weapons to everyone since the 1650s. The Italians in the Swiss were actually kicking it for a pretty good while in European history as being just the place to be for the most part. Also, the Germans were as well, especially with mercenaries, especially from southern Germany. So, yeah, I did know that. And also, another thing that people may not know is that Beretta was one of the main firearms manufacturers for the Italians in World War II. And it was actually highly coveted when the U.S. forces ever captured a Italian Beretta to keep it as a war souvenir or a war trophy, because Berettas were actually considered, even back then, to be pretty good quality. Now, they got a bad reputation when they were put into Army service here in America with the M9A1, pictured here. There we go. Here's the M9A1, the classic, the old tried and true. This one's in 22. That's not a real Beretta. This is a real Beretta in 9mm. But really cool little pistol here. I think it's really neat, but they got a bad rap because they served in the Army for 30 years. They were completely used and worn out by the end of it, so a lot of people started to complain about the quality, but honestly, they did pretty good standing up for 30 years of service and not really being replaced and being used until they were truly worn through. But still, thank you so much for the support, Margaret, and also sharing that fun fact with everyone here, because I love history, and those historical fun facts are the ones I really enjoy. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, Margaret. And also, you do not have to pay a fee for missing a stream. Don't feel bad at all, because I completely understand when folks miss streams. If I could take a day off here and there, I would, but my boss is me, and I'm about the toughest boss I've ever had as far as the work schedule goes. But if folks want to take a day off, I'm totally with that idea. The war is a very stressful thing, and folks sometimes just have to take a break. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a $10 donation. And big shout out to you, Jason, and thank you very much for that support. He says, it seems obvious to me that the Russian government is trying to thin out the population, and you're killing it, bro. You're killing it.
Killing it, Jerry, killing it. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to be honest with you, I disagree a little bit. The Russians aren't actually wanting the population to decrease. Before the war, how in the world do I put this? No, there's really no good way to put it, so I'll just try and put it out there how I can. The Russians and the Japanese are very similar as far as what I would call them, the breeding programs go, where they just try and force people to have kids or really encourage them to have kids. They were doing that heavily before the war because their population has actually been in a steady decline in size over the past 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union. We're probably going to see that Japan, and China are actually going to start dropping in population pretty significantly. Also, Ukraine as well, due to a whole bunch of demographical issues and also people just not wanting to have kids anymore. That's actually a fairly common thing around the world at this point, especially in my generation. It's very common for people just not to want to have kids. But moving on from that, however, and back into the discussion about the Russians, no government wants to just kill off their people, because people are power, economic power, working power, military power. A single individual has a lot of potential as far as a government is concerned. And that's why you've seen over the last century, a lot of governments step forward with a lot of safety regulations and requirements to try and conserve manpower and have it survive for as long as possible. That's why you see pushes for things like healthcare being a universal thing. It's not really for the hell of it. It's really so that way they can keep people in the workforce for longer, and that way the economy is more productive. You also see other things along the lines of workers' safety, like OSHA in the United States is a very common thing. That's to make sure that people don't die on the job, so that way, once again, you live longer and you're more productive, and the economy grows because of that. People are the economic power of a nation, so killing them off is actually very counterintuitive for a government to do just willingly. And that's one thing that always annoys me greatly about here in the United States, because both sides say that the government is trying to kill off certain groups of people one way or the other. That's not the case at all, because you have to remember that the United States, like every country in the world, is always looking to be a little bit better off by the next day. And there's a huge benefit to the people who run the government on either side that it's doing better by the next day, because they're also going to be doing better by the next day. I mean, hell, look at them trade stocks and look at them go. I mean, why in the world would they want to kill off people who are helping those stock numbers to rise in some categories? But by and large, no government ever wants to go out and kill its people off. But when Russia gets involved in a war, however, you see that any concern for the population is thrown out of the window, and they just let people get killed all over the place from poor planning, incompetence, mismanagement, and corruption. And you can also make that argument anywhere when it seems that the government makes a poor policy and people end up dying from it. It's always more so poor policy planning and not really their pure intent to just try and kill people off in the population. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. But that's how I look at it. And also, Tom Exman said, not the DPRK. That's a different program. Believe it or not, they actually also try and conserve their population. They're just the worst at it. And also, they don't give a damn once you break a law that they execute you. They just don't care at that point. But they actually do try and have them stay alive, because it's also important for them as a power sort of deal, like everyone else in the world. But they do a terrible job at it all the way around. And also, they can't even feed their people, so it makes it incredibly difficult for them to ever care for their citizens, considering they can't even provide the most basic of needs, which is food. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for bringing that up, because you're largely correct on that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Yeah, North Korea definitely needs food, man. When they're doing something, like, when they're out there, like, cultivating the fields or something like that, they're not just doing it for the hell of it. Like, they're doing it for the halibut. Yeah, that joke went hard, man. It went hard.
Man, that joke went harder than the rigor mortis. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next.
It flopped like a halibut, like a fish. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from Rangers Rule. And thank you very much, Rangers Rule, for that support. He says, thank you, Enforcers, for your hard work. And also, Ari Soini put in a 10 as well and didn't leave a comment. Thank you, Rangers Rule and Ari.
And thank you, Rangers Rule, for enjoying our hard work and supporting us to help us to keep this thing running. Folks like you and everyone who supports the channel does their part in helping us to be able to do this job, and we thank y'all greatly for that. So thank you so much for supporting us tonight and also enjoying the hard work. And thank you, Ari, for throwing in the pair, and it says thank you and does a bow. That's very kind of you. And I got to thank you so much once again to the both of you for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. Because if it wasn't for you people, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. We don't have the imaginary fairy dust like every other channel has, where they just shove an ad in your face and then you never have to see how much they make. We of course do our thing transparently and openly through the super chats. And if it wasn't for folks like you two, Rangers Rule and Ari, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope it does address it fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, longtime channel viewer who puts in a 10 and says, Qassam rocket, Hamas standard rocket. Is there a wiki article on them?
Man, they got that Qassam, man. That sounds like that, Man, you know, Matthew, what Hamas's biggest export is?
A hummus.
Oh yeah, I screwed it over, didn't I? But here it is.
He's flopping like a fish.
The Qassam.
What in the hell is even that?
What the? Oh, dude, it's terrible. It's terrible. But let's see here. What information do we have on this thing? So they apparently have 4 different versions of the Qassam. And apparently some of them get pretty long, but also some of them get a little bit heavier. And let's see here. What's the range on these things? Not that far, actually. They all are pretty short range. And oh my goodness. Let's see here. What else do we have? Dude, these are literally
Man, what in
rockets.
The world is that, man? They painted it with what? Like, did they not have paint?
Dude, they painted the bottom part with just raw feces, man. That is not paint. That is just, I don't even know. What are these, like clay pots that you put on the porch that they made for rocket nozzles? This thing is awful.
Look at the fins on it, man. It's like, did you like apply the paint or did you just slather it? It's like they literally like slathered it on this thing. It's like they tried to coat it in paint instead of like paint it.
Oh my lord, this thing is terrible.
Man, put a layer on it for goodness sake.
Let's see. Oh, the portion. Let's see. Oh wow, there's a Palestinian Islamic Jihad that in 2007 was making up the majority of the rocket launches. But anyways, also, damn, look at that. Back in 2008, they really started to ramp that stuff up. But anyways, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Hoodoo Texas, because I didn't know the actual name of those rockets. And you have helped me to become a more learned man by the end of the night tonight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Thank you very much for the support, Hoodoo. I'm making sure to help us to keep this thing running and learn a little bit of knowledge so that way we can exercise that hoodoo voodoo knowledge magic on stream. And so with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you once again.
All right, and up next we have a 7 from Margaret Hemsley. And thank you very much, Margaret, once again for that support. And she says, a minimum wage, hourly rate. And you're worth it, a tip. But I haven't gotten one, except if you find a toilet in your dream, don't use it. LCQ, please.
And thank you so much for the support, Margaret Hemsley. And I learned that a while ago. Don't use the toilets in your dreams, fellas. It ain't a toilet, it's your bed that you're going in. But also, thank you so much once again, Margaret Hemsley, for throwing in the minimum wage hourly rate. I thank you so much once again for the support. Folks like you help us keep laboring long and hard hours down here in the deep, dark coal mines, making sure to put this news out there and seeing horrific crap every day and then not letting it see the light of day on this channel. I thank you for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Margaret, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep toiling and working on this channel and drive ourselves close to near insanity. And so with that,
now we can buy some electrical silly.
I don't even know what the hell that is, but I'll back it up.
City.
Oh, we gonna rock down to Electric Avenue. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you so much once again, Margaret, for the support.
All right, and we did get a super chat question from Vizo, who says, any news on the F-16s that are supposed to be sent to Ukraine?
Any news on them? Yet we do got news on them. They're on their way, but we don't really know much more than that. We know the training programs are in place, but beyond that, we don't really know for sure. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to StrayCat241, who puts in 2 super chats. The first one is a 5, which says, who do you think has and had more weaponry, Hamas or the Azov soldiers defending Mariupol?
Probably the Azov soldiers, and a lot better quality for sure, because you see what Hamas is using? I mean, we just showed it on stream. They're using doo-doo brown rockets with John Deere green paint and white fins that look like they were just cut off of a shark somewhere in the South China Sea. So going off of that, I think that the Azov soldiers defending Mariupol have better weapons than Hamas did. And so with that, thank you once again for the support, Stray Cat. And let's hear your second question.
And the second super chat from Stray Cat 241. You know, I just thought about this. What if this is something darker, this username, than we think? It's a Stray Cat number 241, like in the pound.
Oh.
Like a prisoner like 241, Stray Cat.
Does
241.
Does that mean that thing is about to get put down in a couple of days?
Well, I didn't want to go that far.
Well, it sounds like you were trying to inference it, my boy, and I'm getting delusional.
No, this Stray Cat has exemptions. But anyways, this Stray Cat put in another 5 and says, do you think Russia is trying to score a victory because Hamas is making headlines and Russia is a bigger military and getting bogged down?
Perhaps so. Perhaps they thought that because of the lack of U.S. support for the next few weeks, maybe they could try and get one over on the Ukrainians and they'd be weakened, and then they found out that wasn't the case. But it could be that as well. I think it may actually be that more so the case, considering that they want to steal the spotlight and make it look like, oh no, look what's happening in Ukraine, and then it failed miserably. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Stray Cat, and thank you once again for the support. Yay, yay! And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mark Cronin, who puts in a 2 and says, I'd buy that for $1.
And I'd buy that for $1. And thank you so much once again for the support, Mark Cronin. And thank you for buying that for $1. You actually threw in €2, which is equivalent, I think, to like $2.20. But still, thank you so much once again. And I guess you'll buy 2 of those for $1, or 2 of those for $1 each. Whatever floats your boat, sir. But thank you once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running, because folks like you make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Duncan VR, the Duncan VR, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, as always, for that support. He says, Bamuba, order, because you like it. Ba, ba, moo, quack, woof, rough. Animal noises to get rid of the bots. Bah, quack, roof, roof, roof.
And I thank you for the support, Duncan VR. And you wouldn't believe it, man. You wouldn't believe it. Your super chats are bot like what the hell is bot bait, man? That's the best thing I can say. They come in here, man, and you wouldn't believe it, Duncan. Like being entirely serious, there are people who sat there and said, "Oh, I love the Enforcer channel," until they started doing stupid animal noises, and I'm like, kiss my ass. Like really, like it's like we'll do what we want on our show, and I think it's funny, and and I like that annoys me to see people say that kind of stuff. It's like the show wasn't being run only for you, pal. It was being run for everyone, and like people, I got to tell y'all something. The audacity of people nowadays to come onto someone's show and act like sitting around just in their free time, they can cuss you out in their live chat and they deserve to be here. And then not only that, but to also act like they can dictate how our show runs for tens of thousands of people every night. That is just so crazy to me because I would never have a concept of wandering into someone's show and trying to tell them how to run their own show. It's like if I want to tell someone how to run their own show, I'd run my own show, and that's what I ended up doing. So
They sound something like this. Oh my, I was listening to the Enforcer explain the dynamics of modern warfare, and then I heard a cow. And I said, oh dear, I'm so offended by this. I'm an aristocrat. I must leave immediately. You poor soul devil, you bastard.
And you know what's crazy, man? And like I'm gonna be entirely honest. The people who get so offended and stuff over this kind of thing, they sit on their computer all day and like play video games or just hang out on the internet and harass people all day long. And their room's like a mess. They don't clean up behind themselves. There's just trash over the floor. It's like a hoarder's house in there. And then they'll sit there and come on our stream with all these problems, and then sit there and try and tell us how to run our show. It's like, why don't you, like, I don't know, like do something for yourself before you come on to my show that I spent hours working on before we even went live and tell me how to run it. That's one thing that honestly just gets my goat. Because the people who are respectable and nice and stuff, like those folks are actually like nice people, like everyone who's here right now. But then there are people who are just mean as hell, like as a lifestyle. And then they wander in here and they want to act like they can just tell us or like browbeat us into running the show the way they want. It's like it's just
You're not gonna beat my brows.
No, I'm not gonna beat.
You understand me?
not gonna beat my brow. And also, I gotta tell y'all. I don't. And also, some people are joking around like saying, "Hey, don't talk about my house." Oh no, I'm not talking about anyone's house. I'm just saying the people who give us the most crap are the people who don't even have their own lives together. And I'm not saying like the Andrew Tate kind of thing where you have to have like a Lamborghini or some stupid crap like that. No. That's not having your life together. That's just being an asshole. But like having your life together as in, actually being productive with your life, like, helping out folks or, something like that. That's never the case. And then they always come in and they demand the most. And it's so rude, especially considering the amount of time and effort that we put into this every single day to put it on air. But still, Duncan VR, moving on back to your super chat rather than that long soapbox. It actually is bot like attractant for the most part. But I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Duncan, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And so thank you so much once again, and thank you for throwing in the traditional animal noises, because folks like you make it possible. And also Matthew, not you Matthew, but Matthew Hartman, it's halfway bearable with you here. It's going to be a lot more bearable without you here. I'm telling you, man, the room's already gotten nicer. And also, what the hell's up with that kind of stuff? Like, we just got done ranting. I just got done ranting about how people come in here and try and tell us how to run show, and then someone's going to come in here and go, "Oh, Matthew's voice impersonators suck." It's like, if you don't like him, don't be here.
Man, I'm telling you, those bots know how to push your buttons, man. They did that on purpose. If you didn't catch it, man, they did it on purpose.
No, I know they did it on purpose, but it's like, if you don't like it, don't be here. I mean, it's that easy. I'm not like one thing that I'm going to be adamant on from here forward. So we run this show how we run it. If you don't like it, we are totally okay with someone going on and never coming back to the channel and not being here, because it's,
man, I'm not affected or offended by it, to be honest with you. Like, it doesn't faze me one bit. I don't know what people think. Like, all I see on my end is text on the screen from somebody I don't know, like that bot that just came in here that says, "I can't stand the animal noises. Stop immediately. It's halfway bearable if you'd stop." I just think, oh, who the hell even are you? Like, I'll do animal noises and cow noises all day long. Like, who the hell? Get out of here, man.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. But you know, it's just the thing to me, Matthew. I know you're not even offended by it. I'm not really offended by it, but it's still just ridiculous. Like, where the hell do people get off with this crap? Like, listen, I never even talk if I don't like someone's show. Like, I've watched live shows that I didn't like. I don't say crap in their live chat. I just leave. Because it would be so rude to sit there and say crap to someone who's running their own show and just bring them down. I mean, I might not like it, but a lot of other people must like it for them to be on air. So why in the world am I going to try and bring them down for everyone else? It's just rude. I mean, it's just rude beyond belief. I don't know where people get away with thinking they can do that kind of stuff. And I think it's just the internet, because in real life, people rarely ever do that. And when they do, it goes very poorly for them. Like, especially when it's like a comedy routine thing, they usually get flamed on stage. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for support, Duncan VR, and throwing in the traditional animal noises.
I gotta say though, the haters like single-handedly help to boost our viewer count. Like, I will give them that credit because even though they're here and they're seething and they're angry and they're, you know, just overall they need help. They do help us out by boosting the viewer count. Which some nights it's helpful because some nights are lower than others. So thank you to the haters for hating so much and helping us out. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat question. We have a $33 donation from the Hal Rose, longtime channel legend, who says, Enforcer Matt, how can Russia be called the second biggest army on the planet when they have just been upstaged by Hamas, launching bottle rockets? And pick a question, please, and Slav Ukraine.
And I'd have to agree with you, Hal. I think that the Hamas terrorist group is beating out the Russians for being one of the largest armies on Earth. At this point, the Russians have had to been knocked down several notches at this point just by the losses they've taken in Ukraine. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help this thing to keep on running and make this possible. And so, we will make sure to pick a question from the chat, and of course, Slav Ukraini. And what do we got, Matthew?
The question from the chat goes to Wondering, who says, I was wondering, is Serbia and Kosovo still saber-rattling, or have they settled down?
They've settled down, from what we can tell. They've stepped down and stepped off, so they're not in any kind of a standoff anymore, and it looks like the situation was quelled in that area, luckily. So with
stand back and stand by.
Stand down and stand by. That's the words that went down in history. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Hal Rose, and sponsoring that live chat. I hope we were able to answer that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one, it goes to Takha, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much for that support, and sadly, no comment to address. But they did put in a number 1. Excuse me. And I think the number 1 was not their choice. I think that was something YouTube put in there to let us know that was their first ever super chat. So big shout out to you for that support, and we do appreciate you helping to keep us running. And up next, we have a 3 from Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a fine for not listening up properly. Man, she's being pretty hard on herself, and she says, take a live chat question.
And I thank you for the support, Margaret. You don't have to find yourself. You don't have to, I swear. But we will make sure to get a live chat question. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and we will grab that live chat question in just a second because we only have one more super chat to go. And this one is a 5 from Duncan VR, who says, ba moo ba, more animal noises, ba ba ba, moo quack. You want them, you got them, moo moo quack, blah, blah. Now, wait a minute. Oh my. Damn, I can't even do it right. Ba ba ba, order, quack ba.
Oh my. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Duncan. And we will do more animal noises. Ba ba, moo moo, quack quack, beep beep, boop boop, ba ba, ba ba, beep beep, boop boop, boop boop. And that's more like robot noises. But anyways, thank you once again for the support, helping the channel to keep on running. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And now we're getting on into Margaret Hemsley's live chat. And then, due to time constraints, we're going to only answer 5 more live chats beyond that, the Morse code message, and then round out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have the Morse code decoders of the stream: Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Tightlines LSO, Kevin J, and Rumpelstiltskin. The entire roster. They said, hi, LSA gang. Oh, man, they're calling us a gang now.
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
The haters going to be like, it's a gang. But anyways, they said,
they have army in the community name. That's dangerous, man.
Man, LSA, gang, gang. But anyways, tonight's Morse code cipher is, Russian forces are still being beat hard at Avdiivka. Long live the LSA.
Oh, that did not sound like a ringer. One saying, that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate y'all for getting that right for 597 days in a row. We're only 3 days away from day 600. And that means that that's fallen on a Monday when we're not running a show. So maybe we'll try and put out a video, but I'm not really sure because we have another essay that we have to write in law school that's going to take a lot of time, and to be honest with y'all, I'm starting to putter out. So with that, thank y'all for getting the Morse code message correct, and we will see about doing something for day 600. But with that, we are on to Margaret Hemsley's live chat.
This one goes to Matt Whirling, who says, "Is it true that Russian troops are, are in Gaza?"
No, it's not. From what we understand, Russian troops are not in Gaza. They're not in Israel at all. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again, Margaret Hemsley, for sponsoring that live chat. And now we're going to get on to the other 5 live chats, and then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream. So with that, we're on to the next one.
This one goes to Surprise It's Us, who says, "Matt, does the Enforcer know how many miles of tunnels there are in Gaza?"
Sadly, I do not. We assume that there's probably dozens, if not hundreds of miles of tunnel under the Gaza Strip, but we don't actually have an exact number because nobody really knows the number. We just know that there's tunnels there, but we don't have a layout, a map, or anything like that to really get a good measure of how many miles of tunnels there really are. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Maple Leaf Spring, who says, "Question, if Ukraine had a shot at Shoigu right now, would they take it? Or would they prefer to see him make more poor decisions?"
Shoigu! Yes, I think they would probably take a shot at Shoigu because if they didn't take the shot, it would be a shot poorly missed. Well, sadly missed. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
This one goes to Kenneth McLeod, who says, "I hear that Ukrainians have reached tank parity and are approaching artillery parity as well. Do you know how they're doing with APCs and IFVs in comparison to Russia?"
I think the Russians still technically outnumber the Ukrainians in terms of armored personnel carriers, just because they have a load of them inside of Far East Siberia stockpiles that they count in that number. But in operational APCs, we're having a feeling that they are still higher than the Ukrainians in that number, but it's closing the gap rapidly, especially over the past few days. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Wandering, who says, "Are these massive wave attacks Russia is doing a sign of desperation, trying to get any win at any cost, ? And will Russian elites think of Shoigu's endless failures?"
Yes, this is the Russians trying to get a win at any cost at this point, just to have a win to talk about. It's not going well for them, and I think it's a last-ditch attempt as far as their offensive abilities go to try and get something out of it. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is lucky? Oh, wait, hold up, that went wrong. Who is lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Eric Kress, who says, "Matt, if Russia gets involved with stuff going on in Israel, do you think the USA will help push Russia out of Ukraine?"
I don't think we will be getting involved in Ukraine just because Russia is a nuclear power and we're trying to avoid that. I have a feeling we'll probably hop in and help out Israel a lot faster than we would really ever help out Ukraine in a direct armed conflict. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And with that, that is the end of tonight's stream. I gotta thank everyone so much once again for watching the stream tonight. At the peak, there were 5,400 of y'all here. A little bit of a lower audience tonight, maybe because our title was not that good, to be honest with y'all. It didn't really emphasize how heavy the losses were, but nevertheless, I gotta thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It makes us really happy when folks do those things. And of course, help this channel to keep on rolling. And also, make sure to come in tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time again to hear the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And it was a good stream. Thank you all very much. We'll see you all tomorrow. Slava Ukraine, and God bless Israel.
What are the Chinese eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal?
What?